Welcome to my channel. In my channel, you can watch various type of fiction and fantasy audiobook. If you want more video like this, please subscribe my channel.
High School DxD, 3 Years of Cohabitation. Part 6. Luo Yu reached out and caught the golden coordinate falling from midair, unable to believe it. Once I've recovered, I'll try using Balance Breaker. If that doesn't work, I'll use Juggernaut Drive. He refused to believe he couldn't open this thing tonight. Once his holy power was fully replenished, Luo Yu immediately activated the Balance Breaker of the boosted gear. Deep red armor instantly enveloped him. The aura of a peak super devil exploded outward with a boom. Vast amounts of holy power were poured into the coordinate. The golden coordinate grew brighter and brighter, and the repulsive force of the underworld space became increasingly intense. Fortunately, he had set up hundreds of arcane magic barriers in advance, specifically to suppress the aura. If he caused such a huge commotion, it certainly wouldn't escape the notice of Searsex Lucifer and Ajuka Beelzebub. Although it wasn't something shameful, it was generally not good for too many people to know about certain things. Boom. The spatial channel finally opened. But before it could even last a single breath, it was crushed by the overwhelming repulsive force. What was that? As a heavenly dragon that had existed since ancient times, there wasn't much in the three realms that it didn't know. But the image that had just flashed before its eyes had left even it bewildered. Luo Yu didn't speak and put away the golden coordinate. The moment the channel opened, he sensed someone peeking. That gaze had directly pierced through all the arcane magic barriers. It was the Great Red. He hadn't expected that a tiny spatial coordinate would actually attract it. Night fell, a purple moon hung in the sky, and the roars of demons rose and fell one after another. Those demons in the underworld, especially the pure-blooded nobility, seemed to naturally love scheduling balls and banquets at night. At the end of the day, they were bound to the darkness in their bones and couldn't change that. Luo Yu kept the events of that day buried deep in his heart and didn't mention a single word about it again. As for that golden spatial coordinate that had attracted the gaze of the Great Red, it was as if it had never appeared. Ddraig saw his demeanor and knew that this thing wasn't simple. Otherwise, Luo Yu wouldn't have been this cautious. This guy was usually cautious enough, but in all these years, this was the first time Ddraig had seen him this serious. Although it was curious about what the golden coordinate represented and where it led to on the other side, it was sensible enough not to ask a single extra question. Both of them kept their mouths shut, as if nothing had ever happened. The banquet hall of the 21st branch of House Citri was brightly lit. For once, Luo Yu took off his usual attire and changed into a white casual suit that Sona had picked out for him. With his long silver white hair and those golden pupils, standing there, he looked every bit the young noble gentleman. He was at least a supporting character tonight, so he had to tidy up a bit to keep up appearances, even though he didn't care at all. Master, this outfit is too handsome, it really brings out your aura. Tsubaki Shinra's eyes lit up as she stared at Luo Yu, looking him up and down with an appreciative expression. Tsubaki Shinra and Raya Kusaka also nodded gently. This attire was truly eye-catching, it was like he was a completely different person. Master, how do I look in this? Tsubaki Shinra twirled around, her crimson dress matched her red hair perfectly. Beside her, Raya Kusaka wore a pale yellow long dress, which brought out all the gentleness in her. It was somewhat reminiscent of the Yamato Nadeshiko vibe of Akino Himehima, but upon closer inspection, it was completely different. Akino Himehima looked gentle, but the little bit of hidden mischief underneath couldn't be concealed no matter what. Raya Kusaka was truly soft, she spoke in a whisper, and her whole being exuded the air of a virtuous wife and good mother. But if there was someone who most caught Luo Yu's eye, it had to be Tsubaki Shinra. She was wearing a pale purple cheongsam today, which clearly outlined her tall figure, and her long legs looked as if they had been meticulously carved. Her long hair was pinned up, revealing her slender neck and delicate collarbones. You all look quite nice. Little Tsubaki, this outfit suits you. As soon as Luo Yu said this, a faint flush appeared on Tsubaki Shinra's face, but she couldn't stop the sweetness bubbling in her heart. Master is too biased. You only praise her and don't praise me. Tsubaki Shinra pouted, looking full of dissatisfaction. All right, Sona, they're calling you over there, hurry up and go. Sona's outfit tonight matched her temperament very well. The blue dress had a cool tone, and she hadn't taken off the glasses on her nose. Instead, they looked like an accessory, and if she took them off, it would feel like something was missing. Her attire wasn't as striking as Tsubaki Shinra's, but the grand and composed manner she displayed while mingling with guests gave her, in addition to that mature charm, a bearing and stature that only a future clan head would possess. She looked more and more pleasing to the eye. After Tsubaki Shinra and the other two left, Luo Yu took office and found a quiet corner to sit down. The protagonists tonight were Sona and the others. As a supporting character, he just needed to show his face at the end, and he had nothing to do beforehand. Luo Yu casually picked up a fruit that looked like a lychee, peeled it, and stuffed it directly into Ophus's mouth. Ophus didn't dodge. Instead, she quite enjoyed him feeding her. Time passed bit by bit. There were more and more people in the banquet hall. Most of those who came were the current heads of the various pure-blooded demon families, with their own heirs following behind them. For Sona's debut, these supporting characters naturally couldn't be absent to show their support. As soon as those clan heads entered the hall, their gazes would involuntarily drift toward Luo Yu's direction, and they had to carefully retract them. At the same time, they would turn their heads and lower their voices to warn the heirs behind them. Don't you dare provoke that guy, otherwise, the family won't be able to protect you. Luo Yu's identity. It had already spread throughout the circle of pure-blooded demon clan heads back during the great battle that wiped out Hades, god of the underworld. While they were all fearful in their hearts, they couldn't help but envy that old guy, Oliver. This old guy really knew how to have daughters. His eldest daughter, Seraphal, inherited the name of Leviathan and became one of the 4 great Satans of the underworld. The second daughter, Sona, was even more ruthless. That fiancé, whom no one had thought highly of, turned out to be the Red Dragon Emperor, one of the 4 great emperors, and the strongest one at that. With a super devil level combat power like the Red Dragon Emperor standing behind her, once Sona inherited House Citri, who would dare to touch this tough nut? After the banquet officially began, the crowd soon became lively. The heads of the various pure-blooded demon families gathered in groups of 3 or 5, chatting about their own affairs. The successor clan heads gathered together to bicker and compete, with none willing to yield to the others. Demons inherently possessed a fierce nature in their bones. When some people's tempers flared, they would turn hostile at the drop of a hat. Not long after the banquet started, several fights had already broken out. But while they fought, they still exercised restraint. It wasn't that they were afraid of hurting the other party. It was because this place was the territory of House Citri. If they caused too much trouble, it wouldn't look good for them. While fighting, everyone tried their best to avoid a certain direction. They knew in their hearts that if they really affected that side, there would be no need for the other party to make a move. Their own fathers would drag them out and throw them away first. Luo Yu saw quite a few acquaintances at the banquet. Rias Grimori, Akino Himahima, Kaneko, they were all there. Akino Himahima waved at him from afar, greeting him. Someone else also came over. Yo, Red Dragon Emperor. Saraorg Bale's ever-present training outfit was particularly eye-catching. He walked up to Luo Yu, his gaze shifting to the side and landing on Ophus, revealing a puzzled expression. Who is this? Up until now, only Sona, the 4 great Satans of the underworld, and Oliver knew Ophus's identity. Kaneko also knew her name but had been given a gag order. Even on Rias Grimori's side, they only knew her name was Ophus and didn't know what her background really was. Underworld, Satan Castle. Once the name Red Dragon Emperor was spoken, the other party was clearly stunned for a moment. But soon, that Mao-class existence reacted. It was likely just a coincidence that the name matched that legendary infinite dragon god. To be safe, they couldn't let the old Satan faction know the news that Ophus was no longer around. My friend. Luo Yu replied casually, his tone very flat. Seeing that he didn't intend to say more, Saraorg Bale didn't press the question. Red Dragon Emperor, it's been quite some time since we parted ways in the underworld. You've been very quiet lately. I've heard almost nothing from you in the 3 realms. Saraorg Bale sat down, his tone carrying a hint of surprise. It really was like that. Not just Luo Yu, but the other three problem children also seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth, not showing their faces in the three realms. This made many pantheons a bit unaccustomed. Had these four troublemakers really turned over a new leaf? Were they not causing trouble anymore? Saying it's been a long time isn't accurate. I actually saw you every day a few days ago, looking incredibly disheveled. You just didn't notice me. Luo Yu said offhandedly. Saraward Bale's expression changed instantly, and he pointed at Luo Yu. You don't mean to tell me that all the mess in the ancient battlefield lately was caused by you, do you? Pretty much. I happened to be there practicing the combat techniques of the dragon race. You're quite bold. Every time a corpse tide surged, I seem to have spotted you. Luo Yu looked at him with a half smile. Red Dragon Emperor, you're engaging in indiscriminate attacks. Saraward Bale looked speechless. Heaven knows he had almost died in the corpse tides of the ancient battlefield several times. If not for Regulus Nemea protecting him, he would have long since become cannon fodder in the corpse tide. It was the same when they fought in the underworld last time. They fought happily enough then, but he had to dodge the Red Dragon Emperor's dragon breath from time to time. That thing didn't care whether you were friend or foe, it swept everything away. Fortunately, his reactions were fast enough, otherwise, he wouldn't have been killed by the Grim Reapers, but rather burned to ash by Luo Yu's dragon breath, just like those unlucky Grim Reapers. Do you know that the underworld has been on edge lately because of the changes in the ancient battlefield? They've sent several legions to guard it, fearing some major disaster. Saraward Bale complained. When Heaven saw the underworld moving troops, they also strengthened their guard. The atmosphere between the underworld and heaven had finally eased up a bit, but now, it's back to being tense and ready for war. Luo Yu hadn't expected the underworld and heaven to become tense because of this. But thinking about it, they wouldn't actually fight. Sears X Lucifer's group in the underworld didn't want to start a war again, and heaven didn't have the inclination either. The banquet officially began. The surrounding noise gradually died down. Everyone politely quieted down, their gazes uniformly cast toward the stage. Oliver, the current head of House Citri, stood before the microphone. Welcome everyone to my youngest daughter Sona's banquet tonight. A string of pleasantries was spoken with full bureaucratic tone. No one in the audience took it seriously, as they were all there for favors and interests. After the opening remarks ended, Sona walked onto the stage with Tsubaki Shinra, and Raya Kusaka. She introduced them one by one to those present. Saraward Bale stared at Tsubaki Shinra on the stage, his eyes lighting up. Red Dragon Emperor, I heard that these three subordinates of Sona were all trained by you. I think that little girl called Tsubaki Shinra is quite interesting, there's a certain vibe about her. Luo Yu glanced at him sideways. What, do you want to go up there and have a fight with Sona? Saraward Bale scratched the back of his head and quickly waved his hands. How could I do such a thing? If I were to crash Sona's event on an occasion like this, wouldn't I be asking for death? He had a good relationship with Sona, and the Citri clan had been kind to him. His mother had moved to their territory to recover her health, and he remembered this favor. If he really wanted to fight, he would have to wait until after Sona officially participated in the raiding game. However, Red Dragon Emperor, Saraward Bale lowered his voice. Just because I'm not looking for trouble doesn't mean others are staying quiet. I heard that several people are coming for you tonight. Luo Yu thought for a moment and understood. You mean, because I killed quite a few pure-blooded devils in the three realms, someone wants to take advantage of Sona's debut to slap my face and teach me a lesson. Saraward Bale nodded. Those old-school nobles really valued pure-blooded lineage more than their own lives, and Luo Yu's previous actions had long since angered them. Luo Yu's expression was indifferent. You don't need to worry about Sona. She isn't as soft as you think. Besides, if some shameless old fogey actually dares to jump out, I wouldn't mind killing a few pure-blooded nobles right on the spot to establish her authority. These words were spoken lightly, but Saraward Bale felt a chill down his spine after hearing them. He prayed silently in his heart. I hope no one loses their mind and tries to provoke him just because they have seniority. This guy, the Red Dragon Emperor, certainly wouldn't show any face to the devils just because he was standing on underworld territory. If he were truly provoked, and the purple moon shone tonight, I'm afraid it would sever the bloodlines of several pure-blooded devil families. Rias Grimoire stood up and smoothed out her skirt. Sona, let me be your first opponent. Just as she had anticipated, the first one to jump out was indeed her best friend, who was also her strongest rival. Sona wore a composed smile on her face. Rias Grimoire, there is nothing better than facing you in the first battle. As soon as she finished speaking, her formal dress instantly transformed into combat attire. A magic circle appeared beneath her feet, and both of them, along with their respective servants, were teleported into a pre-arranged different dimension. In the banquet hall, everyone perked up, staring at the images transmitted through the projection magic. Sona and Rias Grimoire, these two names were the center of conversation in the underworld. They were not only heirs to pure-blooded devil noble families, but also the younger sisters of the Maos, with too many similarities between them. Now that the two were clashing head-on for the first time, the clan heads present were very curious about who was actually stronger. One must know that Rias Grimoire's debut battle a year ago was quite dazzling. Relying on the power of destruction from the Great Maos family, she had defeated several challengers in a row, firmly securing her position as one of the four kings of the new generation in the underworld. For Sona, this was a tough nut to crack. Saraorg Bale frowned, staring at the craggy, rock-filled different dimension on the screen. This environment is not very favorable for Sona. There were loose rocks everywhere, and the places to hide were pitifully few. At a glance, it was all open ground. For Sona, who excelled at tactical layout, her room for maneuver was severely compressed. He shook his head. If it comes to a head-on collision, it will be hard for Sona to gain any advantage. His cousin's strength was already a cut above Sona's, and the three servants under her were no weaker than Sona's, they were even a bit stronger. Luo Yu was quite calm. Just watch, Sona must have considered this situation. The scene of the different dimension was chosen randomly, which just happened to ensure the fairness of the battle. At this moment, the battle inside the different dimension had already begun. Sona, leading Tsubaki Shinra and Rei Kusaka, engaged the strongest, Rias Grimoire, directly. On the other side, Tsubaki Shinra faced Kaneko, Akino Himehime, and Benya alone. The battle situation had been deliberately cut into two parts by Sona from the very beginning. Heh heh. Akino Himehime laughed until her eyes curved. Student Council President, you don't think you can hold off the three of us by yourself, do you? Tsubaki Shinra gripped the hilt of her sword tightly, her gaze locked onto the woman opposite her. My mission is just to hold you off, that is enough. Akino Himehime stood at the front, smiling, purple lightning already beginning to dance in her palms. It seems we are being underestimated. Before the words faded, lightning struck fiercely toward Tsubaki Shinra's face. Tsubaki did not retreat. She raised her hand and flipped it, and a mirror appeared out of thin air in front of her, blocking the lightning bolt solidly like a shield. Crack! The mirror shattered. The fragments scattered, and after floating in the air for a few seconds, they suddenly lit up on their own. The fragments coalesced, the lightning reflected, and a bolt of lightning stronger than the previous one blasted toward Akino Himehime. The ability of the Mirror of Remembrance was simple. When shattered, it would return the received attack twofold. Besides that, it could also summon strange creatures from the mirror to help the owner share the pressure. Now, Kaneko and Benya were being tightly entangled by those strange creatures. Kaneko used Senjutsu to shatter the summoned objects in a few moves, but as soon as they disappeared, Tsubaki Shinra immediately used the mirror to summon a new batch. There was simply no chance for the two of them to catch their breath, let alone support anyone else. Rias Grimoire casually blocked the interference spell thrown by Rei Kusaka, her tone carrying genuine appreciation. Sona, this move is quite beautiful. Trading one queen to take out an opponent's queen, rook, and knight, this was a very worthwhile trade. The situation suddenly turned into a contest of who could break the stalemate first. Whoever opened the gap first would be able to pull the scales of victory to their side. Sona did not stop her attack. Her specialty, water-based magic, kept pressing Rias Grimoire, and she wasn't idle with her mouth either. To be honest, I don't really want to admit it, but my people were indeed weaker than yours. She knew how troublesome Kaneko was. Although Kaneko was only a low-class devil, After mastering Senjutsu, her level of difficulty could almost rival a middle-class devil. She didn't know much about Benya, the half-breed Grim Reaper, but judging by her posture, she was probably no slouch either. Tsubaki Shinra and Rei Kusaka were both low-class devils, and against those two, they were almost being crushed. That was why she took the risk, having Tsubaki Shinra hold the line against Akino Himehime and the other two. This was the most effective strategy at the moment. The only cost was that she herself had to apply enough pressure to pin down Rias Grimori, ensuring she couldn't be distracted. Otherwise, relying solely on that sacred gear of Tsubaki Shinra's, they wouldn't be able to hold out for long. Below the stage, many old-school clan heads nodded repeatedly. For a newcomer, in their first raiding game, to be able to distribute the combat power of their servants so clearly, splitting, restraining, suppressing, was impressive. She had forcibly dragged a disadvantageous situation into a stalemate. For someone just starting out, this was already very dazzling. Sona is indeed quite strong, but the gap in strength is there, and it's not something that can be made up just like that. Rias Grimori's power of destruction is not to be trifled with. Saraorg Bale spread his hands. He really didn't have much interest in tactics and such. In the end, he believed that raw strength was the kingly way. As long as he could exchange blows and have a satisfying, exhilarating fight, that was the most enjoyable way to battle. Luo Yu rolled his eyes. Can your brain hold anything other than fighting and killing? Look closer. He stared at the magic projection, narrowing his eyes. Sona never intended to win. Her goal is just to drag this debut battle into a draw. Akino Himehime and the other two won't find it easy to take out Tsubaki Shinra in one go. And while Sona, Tsubaki Shinra, and Rei Kusaka can maneuver around Rias Grimori, taking her down is another matter. Saraorg Bale was stunned. Now that Luo Yu put it that way, he realized it. It really was like that. The first debut battle, for Sona, as long as she could force a draw with Rias Grimori, it already counted as a victory. Not only Luo Yu could see this, many people at the banquet table also revealed thoughtful expressions. Time passed bit by bit. Rias Grimori's brows were knitted together, and the power of destruction in her hands kept pressing forward. But the more she fought, the more something felt wrong. Sona's side was like a ball of cotton. For every bit of force she exerted, at most 3 points actually landed. Everything was cleanly dissipated by Sona's water-based magic and Rei Kusaka's arcane magic. She tried several times to force a focus on one target, to take out one of the opponent's combatants first so that she could have a numerical advantage. But Tsubaki Shinra would always rush up to cause trouble at those moments. She wouldn't take the hit head-on, she would just slash a few times and immediately retreat. Then Sona's water-based magic and Rei Kusaka's arcane magic would follow up. Frustrating. Rias Grimori had fought Sona so many times, but she had never fought such a frustrating battle. She glanced at the situation on Akino Himehime's side. It was a bit better than her own side, but only slightly. Akino Himehime's lightning strikes really gave Tsubaki Shinra a headache, combined with Kaniko's senjutsu and Benya's cooperation. Even though Tsubaki Shinra held the sacred gear, the mirror of remembrance, she was being pushed back repeatedly. Sacred gears, no matter how powerful, were not unsolvable. After fighting for so long, Akino Himehime and the others had almost figured out the weaknesses of the mirror of remembrance. Sona's tactical execution was indeed beautiful, utilizing the flaws of the mirror of remembrance to create a rhythm of attrition. But in the end, she still hadn't been able to completely pin down Tsubaki Shinra. That Valkyrie was like sticky taffy. Once she got stuck, she couldn't be shaken off. Sona's side became more and more passive as the fight went on. She was like someone stuck in a swamp, unable to spare a hand to support her own team. Sona, isn't this playstyle of yours a bit too shameless? The Rias Grimori opposite her finally saw through her tactics. She knew Sona too well. This person, from childhood to adulthood, no matter how bad the situation was, would never easily admit defeat. If she could grit her teeth and turn the tables, she would. If she couldn't find an opportunity, she would fight to the bitter end, squeezing out every last bit of faint hope. So Rias Grimori really hadn't thought much at the beginning. She thought Sona was breaking her servants apart one by one to defeat them individually and pull off a beautiful comeback. Who would have thought that this woman never intended to win at all? She just wanted to drag out the time. This opening battle wasn't a ranking match with strict time limits. If, in the end, neither commander retreated, the result would be a draw. Bang! A dull sound of water magic exploding rang out. Sona used water-based magic to wrap Rias Grimoire's power of destruction in layers, grinding it away bit by bit, resulting in a muffled explosion. A curve appeared at the corner of her mouth, and she said, "That guy Luo Yu taught me when playing chess. When you meet an opponent of similar strength, just drag it out desperately, drag it until the other side can't hold on anymore. Even if it ends in a draw, you still gain. If you can hold him off today, you will have a chance to truly stomp him down in the future. The outcome in the three realms is never a matter of one day or one night. It doesn't matter if you lose 10,000 times, as long as you win the most crucial one, that's enough." Admitting defeat and running away isn't shameful. No one dares to claim they are always undefeated. Rias Grimoire opened her mouth but ultimately said nothing. These words didn't really align with her consistent philosophy. But she knew in her heart that what that fool Luo Yu said was probably true. Inside the banquet hall, the clan heads listened to Sona's words clearly through the magical projection. Many people subconsciously turned their gazes toward Luo Yu. Everyone could see how imposing the Red Dragon Emperor was now. But many people had almost forgotten that when he first emerged in the Three Realms, back when he encountered that encirclement by the Norse pantheon, he fought using this exact style. Fight if you can, stall if you can't, and run if you can't stall. Next match, House Citri vs Sigwidia, the match begins. As soon as the barrier in the different space fell, two figures collided. Sona's longsword and Sigwidia's sharp claws clashed across the distance, sending sparks flying. Among the spectators watching below, many representatives from the various pantheons looked displeased. This generation of the underworld was tougher than the last. They couldn't be crushed or ground down. Every time it seemed like it was over, they would stand back up again. The faces of several priests from the Norse pantheon turned green. But to be honest, this was a necessary path for the strong. In this generation of the underworld, aside from a few fierce individuals who dared to fight across the three realms, most young devils were too well protected. There was no helping that, though. After the Great War ended, more than half of the pure-blooded devils were dead. Even after 1,000 years, their vitality had only just begun to recover a little. Who would dare risk the meager foundation they had worked so hard to rebuild? The fighting on the field was fierce, but the gazes from below drifted quietly toward Luo Yu. How much pure-blooded devil blood was on this person's hands? The title of Red Dragon Emperor was not given for nothing. Even the blood relative of the Devil King Ajuka Beelzebub had fallen at his hands. Luo Yu had also heard what Sona said in the different space. He merely shook his head. The things he had given Sona were not just what appeared on the surface. Sona could not accept those truly ruthless methods. They went against her philosophy. Luo Yu did not force her. Each had their own path to walk. Sona could not walk his path. At most, he could offer some experience as someone who had been there before. In the different space, Sona was still relentlessly entangled with Rias Grimoire. Over on Tsubaki Shinra's side, the battle was also fierce. Time ticked by second by second. Rias Grimoire's face was full of speechlessness. Finally, the referee called a stop. Sona Citri and Rias Grimoire, draw. Sona smiled. Next time, don't just play around. Definitely. Rias Grimoire vanished from the different space first. Akano Himahima and Kaneko followed behind her. Sona did not move. She and her companions remained in place, recovering their magic power and stamina. They waited for the next challenger to enter. Third match of the preliminary round, Sona Citri, winner. The referee's announcements rang out one after another. Preliminary round against Disang, winner, Sona Citri. 7th match of the preliminary round, winner, Sona Citri. 11th match of the preliminary round, winner, Sona Citri. Oliver listened to the results, the smile on his face deepening. Where there were happy people, there were naturally unhappy ones. The unhappy ones were the challengers who had been personally knocked off the stage by Sona. When a clan heir fights as soon as they take office, winning is considered skill. But if they lose, it's too embarrassing. Just like this group of defeated seniors who had originally intended to maintain their status and offer guidance, or rather, suppress the junior. As a result, they were suppressed and beaten by the junior in return, they had no face left. Upon returning to their families, they would inevitably be scolded by their own elders. It's the 12th match, and she tied with Rias Grimory of the Grimory clan. 1 draw, 11 wins, that's correct. Many current clan heads nearby were whispering in discussion. No one expected that this little girl from House Citri could make it this far. No one was surprised that Rias Grimory could win 11 matches. After all, she possessed the Bale clan's power of destruction, giving her a huge advantage against devils of the same rank. But what about this little girl from House Citri? Aside from having one high-class devil as a subordinate, everything else was achieved through her own tactical planning and control over the entire situation. It was truly excessively impressive. I wonder if Sona has a chance to break my record of 16 consecutive wins. Saroorg Bale said while rubbing his chin. He knew clearly that if the matches continued, those seniors who had advanced to ultimate class devil like him would definitely not be able to sit still. Even if it meant openly bullying the weak, someone would stand out and break Sona's winning streak. With your strength, plus Regulus Nemea, there's no problem in clearing through these people. Luo Yu glanced at him, his tone casual. These successor clan heads at the banquet were at most on the same level as Saroorg Bale, all being ultimate class devils. And they were a generation older. But Saroorg Bale had Regulus Nemea. After using Balance Breaker, he was enough to contend with the Devil King level. If he couldn't even clear through these people, then he would be too useless. Saroorg Bale saw what Luo Yu was thinking and helplessly spread his hands. I also want to clear through them all. But the situation doesn't allow it. The Bale clan has to consider the face of other pure-blooded devil nobles and cannot go too far. I really dislike these rules and restrictions in these big clans. However, to realize his dream, to become a devil king and build a world that doesn't look at family background, where one can realize their dreams if they have the strength. The power of the Bale clan was essential. Why did that guy go up? It's against the rules, right? Saroorg Bale's pupils constricted as he stared at the young man in the different space within the magical projection. Isn't he just a high-class devil? The opponent challenging Sona this time was still a high-class devil, not a single ultimate class had appeared. It's not that simple. Saroorg Bale glanced at Luo Yu and lowered his voice to explain. This guy has a significant background. He is the next head of the Sabnok clan, Hodder Sabnok. If it weren't for the engagement between you and Sona, he would have been Sona's fiancé. When Luo Yu heard this, he finally realized. If he hadn't transmigrated into this world, according to the original plot, this guy should have been beaten down by Sona in a raiding game, and then the engagement would have been annulled. As soon as Hodder went onto the field, the few current clan heads like Oliver all frowned. Just as Saroorg Bale said, this was not following the rules at all. This was the new generation stage. But looking at the old clan head of the Sabnok clan, Simmons, that old man was as shriveled as a dried orange peel, closing his eyes and pretending not to see. Just a high-class devil, he couldn't stir up any trouble. This old thing, Simmons, probably wanted his only grandson to show his face in this kind of competition to gain some experience for future raiding games. Otherwise, being a high-class devil at his age was truly unjustifiable. Inside the different space was a vast primeval forest. Long time no see, Sona. Hodder wore a smile on his face. Bang! The only answer to him was a figure that had been slashed and smashed into the ground by Tsubaki Shinra. Hodder, your methods are still so unclean. Sona's tone was calm. This guy simply disgraced the name of pure-blooded devils, always playing underhanded tricks that couldn't be brought to the table. Useless. Looking at the subordinate lying at his feet, the smile on Hodder's face instantly turned into ice. All of you, come out. At his command, over a dozen figures emerged from the bushes with a rustle. Sona's expression changed abruptly. Standing before her were all of Hodder's subordinates, his evil pieces had long been used up. Simmons. Hodder brought all his subordinates in, he has completely broken the rules of the preliminary round. Oliver stood up abruptly, his face turning green. In the preliminary round, the number of subordinates sent by the challenger has always been equal to the number of the defender. Never had anyone been seen bringing all their subordinates into the field. How could they still fight? Not to mention Oliver, the other clan heads and heirs present all exploded. Breaking the rules once or twice, the Sabnok clan was going too far. President Sona led 3 subordinates, charging left and right in the dense forest. Tsubaki Shinra rolled on the ground, avoiding the siege of 3 soldiers from the opposite side, and shouted while panting, "President, there are too many of them on the other side." Under the condition that all evil pieces are consumed, theoretically, one can recruit up to 15 subordinates. But in reality, very few devils can actually gather that number. It's not that subordinates are hard to find. It is that most pure-blooded devils want seeds with good qualifications and high potential. Reincarnating these high-quality candidates as devils directly doubles the number of pieces consumed. Those with good qualifications might require 4 pawn pieces. For ordinary ones, 1 is enough. According to the style of those pure-blooded devils in the underworld, they prefer quality over quantity, willing to recruit fewer people as long as they pick good seeds. But this Hodder before her went exactly the opposite way. He had exactly 15 subordinates under his command. Plus himself, that made 16 people. And Sona's side only had 4 people, Tsubaki Shinra, Raya Kusaka, and Tsubaki Shinra. At most, that was all of them. Even if most of Hodder's 15 subordinates were low-class devils, with only 5 middle-class devils, a queen, 2 knights, and 2 bishops, they were still more than enough to fight for. The numerical advantage was right there, crushing them completely. Even if Sona's side had 1 more high-class devil, they couldn't turn the situation around at all. Don't forget, Tsubaki Shinra and Raya Kusaka were currently only low-class devils, not even middle-class. Withdraw. Go deep into the forest. Sona decided decisively, taking the 3 of them and turning to dash deep into the dense forest. If they were really surrounded, it would be completely over. She intended to use the complex terrain of the jungle to lure the people on the other side away one by one, and then take them out one by one. A head-on collision would only result in being surrounded and killed. Sona, keep running. Hodder wore a twisted smile, his voice filled with ruthlessness. No one can reject me time and again without paying a price. Since I can't touch you personally, I'll take it out on your subordinates. The Sabnok clan had proposed marriage to House Citri time and again, only to be blocked every time. Every refusal used that so-called engagement as an excuse. President Sona and her team, they wouldn't lose just like this, would they? Akino Himahima stared at the magical projection in front of her, her brows slightly furrowed. She never expected that under the eyes of so many people, there would still be someone who dared to commit such a cheating act that was nearly shameless. It was estimated that by now, the number of people at the banquet despising Hodder and the Sabnok clan was not small. What's the rush? The good show has just begun. Rias Grimori's mouth curled up, her tone filled with certainty. Once they enter that kind of complex jungle terrain, that will be Sona's home field. Akino Himahima looked up at the projection. In the picture, 3 of Hodder's soldiers were chasing Sona and the others, only to step into an arcane magic trap set up in advance by Raya Kusaka. With a boom, the 3 of them were blown away directly, falling to the ground and completely unconscious. This was not some coincidence. Deep in the jungle, when Hodder was leading his subordinates to surround Sona. Those low-class devils with average strength simply couldn't keep up with Hodder and the others, and were all left behind. Now, this worked out perfectly, giving Tsubaki Shinra and Raya Kusaka the opportunity to act. Tsubaki Shinra's fierce physical techniques were all taught to her by Luo Yu personally. Every move was aimed at vital points, ruthless and lethal. Hodder's 2 mediocre soldiers were no match for such ferocious strikes. Before they could even react, Tsubaki Shinra's blade was already upon them. Just as Hodder realized something was wrong, his 2 soldiers had already been slashed into critical condition, collapsing to the ground and losing all combat capability. Hodder's face turned black instantly. But just as he tried to make a move on Tsubaki Shinra, the girl slipped away into the depths of the forest. Raya Kusaka's arcane magic activated simultaneously, releasing a vast amount of mist that obscured vision and perception, making it impossible to lock onto her location. After a while longer, relying on constant harassment and sneak attacks from Tsubaki Shinra and Rei Kusaka, all 8 of Hatter's soldiers had fallen. Even the middle-class Devil Knight, while pursuing Sona, was taken down by the combined efforts of Sona and Tsubaki Shinra. The two coordinated seamlessly, their movements as fast as lightning, dispatching the opponent in an instant. Now things were interesting. The gap in numbers between Sona and Hatter had narrowed significantly. Only one person difference remained. In the banquet hall, many people secretly glanced at the livid face of the Sabnok clan's old patriarch, their lips curling involuntarily. The little girl from House Citri was playing the old geezer's grandson like a monkey, leading him on a chase around the field. The Sabnok clan was going to be famous now. By tomorrow at the latest, the entire underworld would know of Hatter Sabnok's glorious deeds. Bullying a junior, outnumbering the opponent, and still losing in the end. It was embarrassing just to think about. The situation was clear now. As long as the girl from House Citri didn't rush in and slowly wore down Hatter's familiars, he had no chance of winning. Hatter cursed in anger, having lost all the arrogance he had earlier when he thought he had Sona in the palm of his hand. His right hand had been crippled by Tsubaki Shinra's arcane magic, cutting his combat power by 30%. He never expected that Sona's harem would also know arcane magic, he truly fell because of this. Now, apart from his queen, all his other familiars had fallen. Hatter, you've lost. Sona, accompanied by 3 others, surrounded Hatter and his familiars. I've lost. HMPH, how is that possible? How could I possibly lose? I told you, I would make you pay the price. A glint of cruelty flashed in Hatter's eyes, and he suddenly did something no one expected. He actually punched a hole through his own Queen Familiar's chest. Lord Hatter, why? The Queen Familiar's breath was weak, unable to fathom why her master would attack her. Hatter's cruelty and bloodthirst made Sona frown, and she gestured for Tsubaki Shinra and the others to retreat. This guy would kill his own people, he must be plotting something major. It was better to be careful. Sona, you forced my hand. Say goodbye to your trash familiars. Hatter sneered, and a flash of blood-red light exploded before him. The blood of the Queen Familiar he had just killed was instantly drained. Not only that, but the other familiars lying on the ground, heavily injured and unconscious, also had their blood drained while they slept, dying silently. The blood gathered in the sky, and a strange magic circle depicted with blood patterns unfolded in the air. This is. Sona's face turned pale instantly, and she squeezed a few words through her teeth with difficulty. Sacrificial summoning circle. Activating this type of circle requires burning the life and soul of the sacrificer. The more precious the offering, the more terrifying the summoned magical beast. Hatter had directly sacrificed the lives of his 15 servants. The magical beast obtained at such a price was definitely no small fry. The problem was, this type of sacrificial summoning circle had long been explicitly banned in raiding games. Sona never expected Hatter would dare to use it, nor that he would use the lives of all his servants to fuel it. Simmons. Does your Sabnok clan want to start a war with our House Citri? Oliver roared. What Hatter did completely crossed his bottom line, as well as the bottom line of House Citri. Simmons frowned. He hadn't expected his grandson to be so impulsive, openly violating rules in a raiding game, and attacking just when the little princess of House Citri was making her first appearance. But after Oliver's roar exploded, Simmons's face immediately darkened. These days, no junior had dared to speak to him in such a tone. Oliver, let alone a little thing like you, even if your father who died early were alive, he wouldn't dare speak such wild words in front of me. He snorted coldly. Always talking about war. Just because that little girl Seraphal is a devil king, you dare to provoke my Sabnok clan like this. The few patriarchs nearby listened with disdain in their hearts. This old guy really knew how to pull rank. Not only did he ruin the Citri event, but he also dared to lecture Oliver, the rightful head. Did he really think House Citri was a pushover? Or had he been shut away in his own territory for too long, thinking everyone had to give him, Simmons, some face? He thought too highly of himself. In terms of ability, he was only around the Mao class, yet he dared to invoke Seraphal. If the little girl from House Citri really suffered any mishaps today, that crazy woman Seraphal would definitely tear the entire Sabnok clan apart. Oliver, it's urgent to get Sona out of the different dimension first. Don't let things drag on and cause trouble. The one speaking was Zeoticus Grimory. Reus Grimory and Searsex Lucifer's father. Oliver glared fiercely at Simmons. He also knew now was not the time to tangle with this old fogey. Once Sona was rescued, he would charge this debt to the entire Sabnok clan with interest. Uncle, if you intervene now, Sona's winning streak will be broken directly. That's not appropriate. The patriarchs and successor patriarchs present were all stunned. Following the voice, the person speaking was actually the Red Dragon Emperor, who had been sitting quietly the whole time. If not for him speaking up, everyone would have almost forgotten about him. Xiao Yu, but Sona she. It's fine, don't worry. Luo Yu cut him off directly. Oliver looked at Luo Yu's confident face and slowly lowered his hand. Regardless of whether Hodder had trampled on all the rules, he had already chosen to trust this person. As long as Sona brought those trapped in the different dimension out, it would be equivalent to her admitting defeat. This was her first time participating in an official match, and Oliver, as her father, naturally didn't want his daughter to have any regrets. HMPH, quite a big mouth. The beast Hodder summoned with the sacrificial summoning circle is one we, the Sabnok clan, spent great effort cultivating. Its strength is definitely Mao class. Do you think you can make any waves with just 2 high-class devils and 2 lower-class devils? Luo Yu glanced coldly at Simmons, his tone devoid of any warmth. Say one more word, and I will slaughter you, old thing. I will also uproot the Sabnok clan. I mean what I say. You. Simmons gritted his teeth, trembling with rage, and pointed at Luo Yu. He truly didn't believe the Red Dragon Emperor would dare to wipe out his Sabnok clan on underworld territory. But upon thinking of Hades from the underworld, he swallowed the harsh words that were on the tip of his tongue, his old face flushing red as if he had swallowed a weight. Saraorg Bale frowned, feeling a bit strange. Given how the old guy from the Sabnok clan was acting, it was unlike the Red Dragon Emperor not to take action. This wasn't his usual style. But he didn't notice that the little puppy Ophis was holding had disappeared at some point. Die! All of you, die! Hodder screamed at the top of his lungs. A giant wolf over 10 meters tall walked out of the magic circle. It was indeed as Simmons said, a Mao-class magical beast. The Mao-class pressure radiating from the giant wolf made Sona and the others pale. Just as Sona didn't know what to do, an arcane magic circle suddenly unfolded in front of her, and a slightly impatient little puppy stepped out. Sona, you're out of moves, aren't you? You even summoned such a tiny familiar. Hodder sneered upon seeing the little puppy. In his view, this little thing was likely Sona's familiar. Summoning familiars is allowed in raiding games. But the familiars signed by the new generation of devils are still in their infancy and are basically useless in matches. Many of the current patriarchs and successor patriarchs present also found it strange. Could summoning such a little puppy really suppress a Mao-class magical beast? Even Oliver was puzzled. But since Luo Yu had spoken up, he certainly wouldn't let Sona down. Just at this moment. Awoo, AWOO. Everyone watched in stunned silence as the little puppy's body suddenly expanded, and the aura on its body surged wildly. Mao class. Super Devil King class. Super Devil. The entire venue was dead silent. Whether it was the current patriarchs or the successors, even Oliver, Saraorg Bale, and those like Simmons, their minds were blank. Everyone stared fixedly at the terrifyingly familiar demon wolf in the magic projection. The people of the Sabnok clan all changed color. The god-slaying wolf. Fenrir. A patriarch gritted his teeth and squeezed that name out from his throat. As soon as that name was spoken, the entire venue went quiet. Within the 3 realms, who didn't know this wolf? One of the culprits behind Ragnarok in Norse mythology, a super devil standing at the pinnacle of the world, a terrifying existence ranked in the top 10 of the world. Its fangs were feared even by gods. But the problem was, how did a monster of this level end up in the underworld? Their first battle for the successor patriarchs, held by these pure-blooded devil nobles, was nowhere near qualified to invite such a big shot. Shouldn't this thing be staying in the Norse pantheon? Several patriarchs looked at each other, their gazes all falling on Luo Yu. Thinking of the Red Dragon Emperor's previous reaction, there was no need to guess, Fenrir had come specifically for him. But the problem was, hadn't Loki and Fenrir ambushed the Red Dragon Emperor before? When did that dragon and wolf get together? Also, what about Fenrir's original owner, Loki? That guy used to go everywhere with Fenrir, they were never separated. Saruorg Bale swallowed, his throat tight. Red Dragon Emperor, you've taken this joke too far, that little puppy is actually Fenrir. He had just been standing face to face with Fenrir. Thinking of that scene made his scalp tingle. The little puppy being held like a pet by a little girl was actually that terrifying demon wolf from Norse mythology. This was just too outrageous. If it had suddenly gone berserk back then and taken a bite at him with its god-slaying fangs. Saruorg Bale shuddered and stopped thinking about that image. He subconsciously glanced at the little girl holding Fenrir. What kind of existence was this that could make Fenrir obediently act as a pet? He didn't dare think about it, nor did he dare guess. Some things were safer the less you knew. Saruorg Bale swallowed this secret into his stomach and never mentioned it again. The entire space was shaking. The fragile barrier could barely withstand the oppressive aura of the super devil emanating from Fenrir. That Mao-class giant wolf, summoned by the sacrificial ritual array, had been quite arrogant before, intimidating Sona and her group so much that they didn't dare to move. But what about now? The giant wolf lay on the ground, trembling all over, not even daring to look up at Fenrir. An existence of Fenrir's level simply couldn't be compared to the giant wolf before it. Fangs descended. Blood splashed everywhere. Fenrir, the god-slaying wolf, didn't stop just because the opponent dared not resist. Its god-slaying fangs cleanly pierced through the giant wolf's neck, spraying blood everywhere. The giant wolf was pinned down by the super devil's pressure, unable to even muster the thought of struggling. It let out a shrill scream, its breath growing weaker until it finally ceased completely. The Mao-class giant wolf was dead. Fenrir's blood-stained beastly eyes swept over, meat shreds still hanging from its fangs, and the oppressive aura radiating from its body made Hodder go limp. A chill ran from his spine up to the top of his head. He couldn't muster even a shred of strength in his entire body. This was clearly just a weak familiar, so how did it suddenly turn into the Fenrir that even the gods feared? Don't come over. Hodder's face was as pale as a corpse, his legs gave out, and he collapsed to the ground. Sona, please, spare me. I won't dare to do it again. Sona looked at him coldly. She might have spared his life on another day, but today's events had crossed her bottom line. This fool actually tried to kill Tsubaki Shinra and the others. Splurt. Just like the giant wolf before, Fenrir, with a playful expression, ruthlessly pierced him with its god-slaying fangs. Hodder's face instantly drained of color, his breathing grew weaker and weaker, and his eyes were filled with regret. If he had known, he would have swallowed his pride earlier and not come to cause trouble for Sona, then he wouldn't have been killed by this terrifying demon wolf. Or rather, he shouldn't have stepped into the territory of the Seatree clan at all today. He should have stayed as far away as possible. Hodder was dead. He died under the god-slaying fangs of the god-slaying wolf Fenrir. The banquet hall was terrifyingly quiet. The appearance of god-slaying wolf Fenrir had already rendered them speechless with shock. What terrified them even more was that the Sabnok clan's only bloodline had just been severed. Right in front of everyone, one of the pure-blooded devil noble families from the 72 Pillars of Demon Kings had ended. Since the end of the Devil Civil War, this was the first time. Many current heads of households looked toward Simmons. His hands were trembling, his eyes full of madness. Arg! Simmons suddenly let out a roar. Oliver! This isn't over. My Sabnok clan will definitely make you Seatree pay in blood. He clenched his fists, murderous intent overflowing. He had completely lost his mind. The Sabnok bloodline was severed. I'll start with your little daughter first. Oh no. Oliver's expression changed. The crazed Simmons mobilized all his magic power and slashed fiercely toward the other side of the different space. Simmons was determined to tear apart that different space, leaving Sona and the others trapped forever in the void crack. Did you treat my words as wind in your ears? Luo, you didn't even give Oliver a chance to act. He gripped the Crimson Dragon Holy Sword, flickered instantly in front of Simmons, and raised his sword to slash down. Simmons screamed as his right arm was severed at the root. Red gold flames were still burning on the wound, causing him to convulse in pain. Red Dragon Emperor! Simmons roared, his heart-rending cry echoing. The grudge of severing the Sabnok clan's only bloodline, the Red Dragon Emperor also had a share in this debt. But how could he possibly be a match for the Red Dragon Emperor? Just as his remaining sanity urged him to run, Luo Yu's fist arrived. Punch after punch, all aimed at lethal spots. Bang, 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 bang. A series of dull yet crisp sounds came from Simmons's body. That was the sound of bones shattering one by one. Arg! Screams echoed one after another. Simmons was like a broken kite, knocked around in midair by Luo Yu. It didn't take long. This Mao-class powerhouse, the last person of the Sabnok clan, didn't even have time to react before he was blasted into a mist of blood by Luo Yu's draconic strength. From this moment on, the Sabnok clan was completely finished. In the history of the underworld, this name would no longer exist. Simmons was dead. Right in front of all the pure-blooded devil noble heads and heirs of the underworld, he was beaten to a pulp alive by the Red Dragon Emperor. This turn of events came too fast and was too ruthless. When the Red Dragon Emperor acted just now, many heads of households, including Oliver, thought he would at most teach Simmons a lesson. After all, this was in the underworld and at the Sea-Tree clan's banquet, things shouldn't get too out of hand. No one expected the Red Dragon Emperor would kill someone so cleanly and decisively. No one even dared to guess in that direction. Only Saraorg Bale had an expression that suggested he had expected this all along. He had seen the Red Dragon Emperor's methods with his own eyes. If you really provoke him, he doesn't care about the occasion, he'll just kill you first. Red Dragon Emperor, you have such gall. Daring to sever the bloodline of a pure-blooded devil in the underworld. The first person to react stood up and sternly rebuked Luo Yu. The Red Dragon Emperor had completely severed the Sabnok clan's bloodline right in front of so many pure-blooded devil heads of households. This was equivalent to slapping the face of the entire underworld's pure-blooded devil nobility. Honor and dignity were all trampled underfoot. No matter how disliked Simmons was, it was an internal matter of the underworld. It wasn't the place of the Red Dragon Emperor, a son-in-law of the Sea-Tree clan, to intervene. Oliver furrowed his brows. It wasn't that he was dissatisfied with Luo Yu's actions, but he was wondering how to clean up the mess. Who could have thought that Sona's first battle would turn out like this? In the end, it was all the Sabnok clan's own fault. If Simmons had controlled his grandson earlier, there wouldn't have been so many problems. Oliver was the host, and he had to stand up and say something at this moment. But he hadn't risen yet. PFF'd. The pure-blooded devil head of household who had just scolded Luo Yu in public had his chest pierced directly by the Crimson Dragon Holy Sword, pinning him in midair. Arg! He screamed. The Red Dragon Emperor had acted suddenly, and he hadn't reacted at all. Sacred power is poison to devils, it churned crazily inside him, grinding away his vitality bit by bit. Luo Yu stood in midair, looking down at the heads of households and candidates below. A mere ultimate-class devil, daring to shout at me. His voice was as cold as ice. Have I been too quiet lately, making you think I'm easy to bully? Or are you thinking that in the underworld, on your own turf, I wouldn't dare to kill or cut off the roots of your pure-blooded families? A majestic pressure descended from the sky like a heavy hammer striking everyone. Luo Yu hadn't activated the balance breaker of the boosted gear, but his pressure was already not much worse than a super devil's. That pure killing intent made many heads of households feel a chill down their spines and their scalps go numb. Truly remarkable, this son-in-law of Oliver's. Geoticus sighed. The Red Dragon Emperor is the first one to dare to say he would wipe out several pure-blooded families in the underworld. Even when the heavenly dragon Didrag was alive, he wasn't this arrogant, right? If this continues, I'm afraid he'll be ganged up on by the others. Geoticus watched the head of household pinned in the air by the Crimson Dragon Holy Sword, the sacred power torturing him until he wished for death, his breathing growing weaker and weaker. Being ganged up on is his own fault, that overbearing guy. Rias Grimori chimed in. Geoticus smiled and didn't respond. He knew his proud daughter had a grievance with the Red Dragon Emperor and had suffered losses, even her servant, Yudo Kiba, had been defeated by him. President, don't you think you being this way, sometimes overbearing, sometimes gentle, is just like poison? Akino Himahima said with a beaming smile. There was a hint of deep affection hidden in her eyes as she looked at Luo Yu. I know. Rias Grimori rolled her eyes at Akino Himahima and retorted impatiently, aren't you just terrified by that guy? Oh my, President, you're jealous, aren't you? Luo Yu released the head of the Crissell clan, his tone incredibly arrogant. All the current heads of households in the underworld present exploded with fury. So what if you are the Red Dragon Emperor? This is the underworld, not a place for you to run wild. Release him. Sure, what's the problem? Luo Yu suddenly grinned. Saraward Bale felt a trace of doubt in his heart. Why is this kid so agreeable today? But the next second, he knew he had thought too much. This fool was as ruthless as ever. Seeing the red flames on the Crimson Dragon Holy Sword in Luo Yu's hand suddenly flare up. The head of the Crissell clan didn't even have time to finish his scream before he turned into a fireball. Only a pile of ashes remained drifting in the air. The whole place was deathly silent. This was the second one. Today, the second pure-blooded devil noble head of household killed on the spot. The Red Dragon Emperor's ruthlessness made many people's hearts turn cold. How could he dare? How could he dare to kill a pure-blooded devil head of household so blatantly? Luo Yu had truly pissed everyone off this time. Oliver covered his forehead. He had no idea how to clean up this scene. Red Dragon Emperor, you've gone too far. Adelaide, the head of the Bale clan, had no choice but to stand up and speak at this moment. Too far. Luo Yu laughed, his golden eyes filled with coldness. So what? I'll give you two choices now. Watch my fiancé's first battle obediently, and don't try any funny business. Otherwise, you'll all stay here today. I mean what I say. That murderous intent that pierced straight to the heart exploded from Luo Yu, suppressing the entire venue. Keep them all here. Arrogant, simply arrogant beyond measure. Most of the pure-blooded devil nobility of the underworld were here. If he really killed them all, what difference would it be from directly declaring war on the underworld? But even Adelaide, the head of the Bale clan, didn't dare to say anything more at this moment. The deaths of the head of the Crissell clan and the old head of the Sabnok clan were right before their eyes. Who would dare to move? In the Red Dragon Emperor's golden eyes, murderous intent churned terrifyingly. None of the current heads of households dared to risk their lives, gambling on the Red Dragon Emperor showing mercy for the sake of the underworld's face. When this guy chopped down the first two pure-blooded devil noble heads of households, he didn't even blink. Whoever jumps out to be the first bird to be shot probably has to think about whether they can return alive. But letting them just admit defeat like this made them feel incredibly stifled. Killing someone from the underworld on underworld territory, and in the end having to swallow their anger, what kind of situation is this? I know some of you don't like me and want to pull something during my fiancé's first battle. After all, the number of pure-blooded devils who have died at my hands is at least 20, if not 50, and that includes a blood relative of a devil king. When Luo Yu said this, it was like showing off his battle record. Those heads of households whose pure-blooded devils had been slaughtered by him would have rushed up to fight him to the death if not for someone pulling them back. Of course, the only result would be a few more souls on Crimson Dragon Holy Sword. Luo Yu swept his gaze coldly around the room, completely indifferent to the fury in the clan heads' eyes. I advise you all not to think too highly of yourselves, and don't place too much importance on pure-blooded devil nobles. Compared to the god of the underworld, what are you? If I can destroy the god of the underworld, I can destroy you just as easily. These words landed like a heavy blow, and the hearts of the surrounding clan heads sank. The words were harsh and their hearts were stifled, but they had to admit, the Red Dragon Emperor, who could destroy the god of the underworld, would indeed not need much effort to eliminate them. It might even be easier than dealing with the god of the underworld. Red Dragon Emperor, you are very strong, and you could kill us all. But don't forget, the underworld still has the 4 great Satans sitting in command, and there are 2 super devil beings. The god of the underworld is nothing. A hot-blooded young successor clan head roared out. Beside him, Saraward Bale shook his head. Didn't he see that the old clan heads were all keeping quiet? Why was he blabbering like that? He was truly courting death. If the Red Dragon Emperor killed you on a whim, you would die for nothing. This time, Luo Yu actually didn't take action. He stared at the young clan head and nodded. The underworld has two super devil beings, which is indeed impressive, especially since they are still standing after experiencing the Great War. The tone of his voice suddenly shifted, becoming cold. But if I were to bring the four great emperors and Fenrir to surround and kill those two super devil beings of yours, it shouldn't be difficult, right? The young clan head's anger was doused like a bucket of cold water, and he stammered, unable to speak. He wanted to retort, but couldn't find a single word to fire back with. Luo Yu swept his cold gaze around the area. Two super devil beings, two quasi-super devil beings, plus one peak Mao class. With this lineup, let alone those two super devil beings from the underworld, even if all the four great Satans came, it would still be a fight. He paused, his tone becoming even colder. It might even be easier than when we ambushed Hades. The expressions of the incumbent clan heads in the audience changed instantly. Luo Yu's words struck exactly at the weak point they were most unwilling to face. If they were truly all wiped out by the Red Dragon Emperor, would the underworld really turn against the Red Dragon Emperor for the sake of a few dead people? Their hearts were pounding with uncertainty. Some already vaguely had the answer, but they didn't dare to think too deeply about it. Some were still deceiving themselves, refusing to admit it. Don't forget, Luo Yu's voice sank, I have the promise of the dragon species of the three realms. As soon as these words fell, the entire venue was in an uproar. The Red Dragon Emperor had severed the shackles of the dragon species, obtained the essence blood of the three realms dragon species, and could command all dragons to take action once. Only then did they realize that the Red Dragon Emperor before them was no longer the reckless youth who had charged through the three realms alone. Behind him, a force had already coalesced. A force capable of leveling the underworld. Just then, Luo Yu suddenly turned his head and looked at a certain point in the void. You've watched for long enough, it's time to come out, Seers X Lucifer. The banquet instantly erupted into chaos. Lord Lucifer has arrived. Rias Grimory's eyes lit up as she looked around. Brother is here. Space distorted, and the red-haired Satan, Seers X Lucifer, stepped out slowly. Nice to meet you, Red Dragon Emperor. Luo Yu raised an eyebrow. You and Ajuka Beelzebub are the same, you both love hiding in the shadows to watch the show. Seers X Lucifer smiled slightly. The Red Dragon Emperor is joking, I only just arrived. This was not an easy statement to respond to. If it were confirmed that he had arrived earlier, it would mean he had watched the head of the Crysel clan and the old head of the Sabnok clan die. Tomorrow, the old fogies would be making a scene at the New Mao Castle again. Lord Lucifer. The clan heads and successor clan heads present bowed one after another to show their respect for the Satan. Seers X Lucifer spoke calmly. This matter ends here. The clan heads took the opportunity to back down, nodding one by one while feeling stifled. They couldn't really let the Red Dragon Emperor drag the underworld into the abyss, could they? Luo Yu sat back down beside Ophis. He had vented his anger and established his prestige. He still had to give Seers X Lucifer some face. Besides, today was Sona's first battle, and making too much of a scene wouldn't be appropriate. Clan head Oliver of the Seatree clan, I came on behalf of Seraphal to watch Sona's first match. I came without giving advance notice, I hope you don't mind. Lord Lucifer, you are too polite. That you could come to watch my daughter Sona's first match is an honor for our entire Seatree clan. Oliver finally felt at ease. This matter was considered closed, and the remaining trifles were of no consequence. Sona stood in the different dimension, her brows furrowed. Had something happened outside? The matter of Hodder being killed must have caused some trouble. She and Tsubaki Shinra and the others had been waiting in the different dimension for a long time, and their stamina and magical power had fully recovered. But no one had teleported them out, and no new opponents had entered. This situation looked wrong no matter how she viewed it. Sona Seatree thought it over, and the only variable was that Fenrir had killed Hodder. Hodder was the last remaining descendant of the Sabnok clan. Logically, the first battle should have been called off. This was no small matter. She was just about to ask the referee what was going on, when a voice suddenly reached her ears. Sona, your opponent is O'Flauros. A young man walked out, radiating the aura of a high-class devil, with 3 servants following behind him. Miss Sona, please treat me well. Sona was stunned. The relationship between the Flauros clan and their Citri clan had always been rather hostile. This group had come to the banquet with ulterior motives, so why were they suddenly being so polite? She couldn't help but mutter to herself. Could it be because of Fenrir? Sona looked down at Fenrir, who had turned back into the appearance of a small puppy beside her. A magic circle suddenly lit up beneath Fenrir's feet, and in the blink of an eye, it disappeared from the different dimension. Saroorg Bale stared at the magic projection and spat. These spineless fools. In the image, O was clearly going easy, being suppressed by Sona and retreating repeatedly. When this guy fought him before, the viciousness he showed was literally life-risking. Even if he knew he would lose, he would pounce to bite off a piece of flesh. And now, he had nothing left. Saroorg Bale didn't need to think to know that everyone who came on stage next would be the same. So what if they won? Who could guarantee that the brutal Red Dragon Emperor wouldn't come looking for them? Although the probability was small. But after the heads of 2 pure-blooded devil noble clans and 1 successor had died, no one dared to gamble on that luck again. Besides, if you died for nothing. The clan wouldn't stand up for them, and they didn't have the guts to do so either. This matter was already perfectly clear. Sears X Lucifer did not accept Oliver's offer of a seat, walking straight up to Luo Yu and Saroorg Bale. He waved his hand, setting up a barrier, and the light and shadows around them instantly became blurry. Saroorg Bale was stunned, unable to understand why his Satan cousin had suddenly set up a barrier. But Sears X Lucifer's next action left him dumbfounded. Long time no see, Lady Ophis. Sears X Lucifer completely ignored the dumbfounded Saroorg Bale beside him and bowed respectfully to Ophis. The posture was just like the incumbent clan heads bowing to the successor clan heads. The weak must show absolute respect to the strong. And in the 3 realms, there was almost no one who could be called strong in front of the infinite dragon god Ophis. You are stronger than Ayu, but you cannot beat him. Ophis swept a glance at Sears X Lucifer and said calmly. That is a very honest statement. Sears X Lucifer smiled. He knew very well that the Red Dragon Emperor's own strength was only at the peak of the Mao class, but once he used the boosted gear, especially when activating the Juggernaut drive, his combat power would soar directly to the Super Devil level. Even a guy at the level of Hades, god of the underworld, could be killed by him. He really couldn't beat him. Besides, the Red Dragon Emperor must still be hiding other secrets. Take this time for example. He didn't even use the balance breaker of the boosted gear, yet he precisely detected him hiding in the shadows. Relying solely on the strength of a peak Mao class, this would be impossible to do. Saroorg Bale beside him slowly steadied his emotions. Although he had long guessed that this little girl holding Fenrir wasn't simple, he never dared to think of her as the infinite dragon god Ophis. Now that he thought back on it, it made sense. Only an existence like Ophis could tame a super devil being like Fenrir to be like a little puppy. He was quite fortunate at this moment. If those ignorant incumbent clan heads had kept making a scene earlier and annoyed Ophis. If she slapped them down, it would truly be a disaster from the blue. They would die for nothing. In the 3 realms, no one dared to provoke the infinite dragon god Ophis. At this time, Fenrir also passed through the magic circle and appeared in the barrier, jumping into Ophis's arms. It continued to act as her little puppy. You were slow. There's no help for it, some people are too troublesome to deal with. If I strike too hard, I'm afraid of alerting the enemy. I can only trouble you to stay in the underworld for a few more days. Sears X Lucifer understood that Luo Yu was annoyed that the speed at which they were dealing with the old Satan faction in the underworld was too slow, but some things could not be done recklessly, even for a Satan. However, the Red Dragon Emperor making such a scene was actually a good catalyst. Valley wants to go with you. That descendant of the original Lucifer, just how strong is he? Sears X Lucifer frowned, thinking carefully. Rizvam Levon Lucifer's strength was definitely not weak, and the key was that he countered the White Dragon Emperor perfectly. Don't worry, he will be a good card in your hand. Luo Yu had great confidence in Valley's potential. It had been dragging on for so long, that guy should have at least practiced other forms of the Juggernaut drive. If he unleashed his full power, entering the true Super Devil level wouldn't be a problem. It would also serve to completely remove the thorn in his heart. Sears X Lucifer nodded. Since it was someone guaranteed by the Red Dragon Emperor, it should be reliable. Do you intend to watch from the sidelines? Sears X Lucifer heard another meaning in Luo Yu's words. For just one Risvam Levon Lucifer, the two of you are enough. I have to keep an eye on the others, just as a repayment for you helping me block Zeus last time. Is there someone behind Risvam Levon Lucifer? Sears X Lucifer's heart tightened. Anyone who could make the Red Dragon Emperor take notice must also be at the Super Devil level. It's not that there is someone behind him, it's that someone doesn't want him to die. These two situations are vastly different. Sears X Lucifer did not respond. Risvam Levon Lucifer was a bomb buried in the underworld. The underworld wanted to dismantle it, but naturally, there were others who wanted to protect it. One cause and one effect, there was nothing to say. It was just that for a moment, he couldn't figure out who benefited the most from Risvam Levon Lucifer being alive. Ordinary devils. Or the head of some pure-blooded devil clan. He thought of heaven first. The second was that group of fallen angels, Grigori. After all, these two sides had always been at odds with the underworld. But Sears X Lucifer knew in his heart that it absolutely could not be them. Whether it was Michael or Azazel, it was impossible for them to take action for the sake of Risvam Levon Lucifer. Saraorg Baal, listening from the side, only half understood, but his heart was filled with dread. He had a feeling that after tonight, the underworld was likely going to undergo a major change. Round 1, Match 16, Sona Citri, winner. Round 1, Match 17, Sona Citri, winner. Round 1, Match 21, Sona Citri, winner. Round 1, Match 24, Sona Citri, winner. The referee's voice echoed repeatedly throughout the banquet hall. After Sona walked away from the heir of the Furkas clan, she felt that something wasn't quite right. Every match had been won too easily. Some opponents clearly had pieces or personal strength that firmly surpassed hers, yet at every critical moment, they would inexplicably reveal a flaw, which she would coincidentally seize and use to strike through directly. It wasn't until she easily defeated a team composed of one ultimate class devil and 3 high-class devils that Sona's expression finally darkened. She stopped a challenger who had a good relationship with the Citri clan. The other party couldn't withstand her interrogation and confessed everything from beginning to end. After hearing this, Sona didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was also shocked by Luo Yu's audacity. Right in front of so many current clan heads, he had completely wiped out the Sabnok clan, and another current clan head had also met their end. As a result, not a single person dared to make a sound. It was truly boundless domineering. Sona once again felt what kind of power, capable of turning clouds and rain with a flip of his hand, was hidden beneath Luo Yu's calm face, power that could even make the entire underworld bow down. But after thinking about it, she took a deep breath and spoke. I, Sona Citri, forfeit my qualification for the preliminary matches. The preliminary matches end here. She chose this path and would not take another step. Even if she really defeated all the remaining heirs, it would be meaningless. She wasn't angry that Luo Yu helped her. To be honest, she only felt gratitude and reassurance that Luo Yu had stepped in to suppress those old fogies for her. For her alone, he had offended almost the entire underworld. What woman wouldn't be moved? Sona Citri was certainly no exception. But victories gained by people constantly going easy on her were an insult to her. If she was to win, it had to be by her own ability and her own brains. Not because others feared her and didn't dare to use their full strength. The moment Sona announced the end inside the different dimension, many people outside finally breathed a sigh of relief. It should be peaceful now, right? A small air battle causing so much trouble was the first time in so many years in the underworld. When Sona walked out of the different dimension, the Citri clan's banquet finally came to a complete end. When the banquet dispersed, many current clan heads exchanged brief pleasantries with the host, Oliver, and then hurriedly left with their successors. Sears X Lucifer and Saraorg Baal nodded at Luo Yu and also left. Originally, Oliver and Sona had discussed taking this opportunity to announce the engagement between Luo Yu and Sona. But Luo Yu's move just now was too ruthless. Announcing the engagement now would only make the atmosphere more awkward. Moreover, after such a commotion, Luo Yu's identity had already spread. Now, in the entire underworld, there were probably very few devils who didn't know that the Red Dragon Emperor was the future son-in-law of the Seatree clan. The House Seatree banquet had ended. But this storm hadn't stopped at all. Instead, it grew bigger and bigger. Those old fogies who didn't attend the banquet heard that the Sabnok clan had been wiped out and the head of the Crysel clan had also been beheaded. They were all jumping with rage. They wanted to go find the Red Dragon Emperor to demand an explanation, but they were afraid they wouldn't come back if they went, so they could only give up after thinking it over. These old fogies turned their spears toward New Mao Castle, applying pressure constantly. But New Mao Castle ignored them completely. The old fogies were unwilling to give up, so they incited the pure-blooded nobles under them to cause trouble, obstructing the political decrees of New Mao Castle, and even cutting off supply lines. Forcing New Mao Castle to give an explanation, saying that the underworld couldn't just casually cut off the bloodline of a pure-blooded family. With them causing such a ruckus, many young clan heads were cursing them behind their backs for being shameless. These old things didn't dare to settle scores with the Red Dragon Emperor, so they only knew how to bully New Mao Castle. It wasn't because they felt the four great Satans were too soft. If it were in the past, they would have been dealt with long ago. But what happened next shocked the entire underworld. New Mao Castle issued a direct order. Anyone who dares to cause trouble, kill. Anyone who dares to disturb order, kill. Anyone who dares to disobey political decrees, kill. The devil army of New Mao Castle was fully armed and deployed, the sound of war drums shaking the entire underworld. By this time, many old fogies began to panic, but they still kept a stiff upper lip, thinking New Mao Castle was just bluffing. After all, since Sears X Lucifer and the others took power, they had rarely killed. But, when Sears X Lucifer personally led the devil army and descended upon their family territories, the faces of these old fogies turned pale. This time, New Mao Castle was truly furious, and all of them who were causing trouble would become sacrifices to appease that rage. Some cried and begged for mercy. Some cursed loudly. Some refused to admit their guilt to the death. Others screamed at the top of their lungs, saying how much merit they had contributed to the underworld and that they shouldn't end up like this. Saying that the four great Satans had no right to judge them. Those desperate cries couldn't stop the steps of the devil army at all. One pure-blooded devil noble family after another was exterminated, not even leaving a dog behind. Heads rolled everywhere, and the black earth was soaked with blood. The pure-blooded devils in the distance witnessed all this, their legs going soft with fear. The intensity of this slaughter was almost catching up to the devil civil war back then. When this battle was over, the prestige of New Mao Castle soared directly to the level of when the first-generation four great demon kings ruled the underworld. From now on, which devil would dare to play tricks on New Mao Castle? New Mao Castle looked domineering from afar. The towering city walls were like an iron bucket, protecting the core mansion inside. The devil soldiers on the walls were more vigilant than usual, their eyes filled with killing intent. Perhaps because of the excessive killing over the past few days, the whole city was permeated with the smell of blood. In the conference room, the demonic Forbidden Army just sent word that the last disobedient Furfur clan has been completely dealt with. The one speaking was Falbium Asmodeus, one of the four great Satans of the underworld. He was clutching the battle report sent from the front line. As the underworld's top tactician and the big shot in charge of military affairs, he had commanded this great purge. In less than 10 days, 6 pure-blooded devil noble families were exterminated, 2 of which belonged to the old Satan faction. Up to now, the underworld has lost 4 Mao-class powerhouses, dozens of ultimate-class devils, and countless other devils. Sigh, although this purge didn't kill as many experts as the Devil Civil War, the casualties of ordinary devils are about the same. Falbium Asmodeus put down the battle report and sighed. The Devil Civil War was intense, mainly experts against experts, and didn't drag the lower-class devils into it. But this time was different. The 6 major pure-blooded devil territories, as well as the small families under them, not one was spared. All killed. The underworld had stirred up another bloody storm. this was not what he wanted to see. Thank you for your hard work, Falbium Asmodeus. Ajuka Beelzebub spoke. Besides Ajuka Beelzebub, Seraphol was also in the conference room. Seers X Lucifer was still on the front lines leading the demonic Forbidden Army, doing the final cleanup work. The underworld has been hurt quite badly this time, but at least the cancer that is the old Satan faction has been completely removed. Even if we don't care about it in the future, that old Satan faction won't be able to turn things around again. Ajuka Beelzebub's tone was calm, but his eyes were sharp like knives. Falbium Asmodeus gave a wry smile and sighed. It's not that I don't understand what you're saying. But this purge affected too many people. People who fight wars are always ruthless. Falbium Asmodeus never showed mercy to enemies. Back during the Devil Civil War, nearly half of the old Satan faction died by his hands. But to ask him to attack defenseless, innocent devils, this cold-bloodedness was something he really couldn't do. If we don't act now, there will be big trouble sooner or later. Those old things are still living in dreams, fantasizing every day that the underworld could return to its peak era. The Red Dragon Emperor's actions that day woke up many people, but some people are just too deeply drunk. Ajuka Beelzebub shook his head, his tone becoming colder and colder. In the underworld now, these old fogies are the biggest stumbling blocks. Since they don't want to wake up themselves, then let them sleep forever. Clinging to those false glories, stupid until they die. Falbium Asmodeus didn't retort again. He knew Ajuka Beelzebub was right. Ever since the Red Dragon Emperor wiped out the Sabnok clan at the Seatree clan's banquet, Numau Castle had consecutively beheaded 6 more pure-blooded noble families. With this, 1/10 of the 72 pillars of pure-blooded devils were directly gone. Added to the consumption from the Great War and the Devil Civil War, there were now less than 30 pure-blooded devil families left in the underworld. Seraphol, has that contract on you had any problems recently? If you can't hold on, just go back to House Seatree and stay for a few days. Ajuka Beelzebub turned and asked. They couldn't invite the Red Dragon Emperor to Numau Castle, so they could only let Seraphol go back voluntarily. Right now was the critical time for cleaning up the die-hard members of the old Satan faction. Those old fogies hiding in the dark were being pulled out one by one, and next was to go straight to the root and take out the nest of the old Satan faction. At this juncture, if the contract on Seraphol backfired, it would be troublesome. Rest assured, I have a feeling that nothing will happen in the short term. Maybe, it's because that fool is also in the underworld. Seraphol's tone carried a bit of complaint. If it weren't for that guy strengthening the contract, causing her to be tied to the human world and accumulating a huge pile of diplomatic documents, she wouldn't have missed little Sona's preliminary match. However, that fool actually did a good thing this time. Wiping out the Sabnok clan. Daring to tamper with little Sona's preliminary match and openly violating the rules of the rating game, such trash deserved to die. Even if that fool didn't act, the Sabnok clan would have long been on the purge list. The old thing in their family had repeatedly made trouble for Numau Castle and should have been dealt with long ago. It's good that it's okay. Ajuka Beelzebub continued to ask. Falbium Asmodeus, how much longer will the preparations on the military side take? Falbium Asmodeus replied. Soon. During the Great Purge, I secretly sent people to follow behind Seers X Lucifer. Once he wipes out those pure-blooded devil nobles and leaves behind empty territories, I will let the demonic Forbidden Army quietly deploy. Even the communication channels between those supporters and the old Satan faction have been taken over by me. In the short term, it won't be exposed. After all, once the Red Dragon Emperor made a move, things blew up. If the Red Dragon Emperor hadn't made the first move, those old fogies wouldn't have jumped out to confront Numau Castle. Defying the decrees issued by Numau Castle was basically going against the entire underworld. To outsiders, the underworld was uncharacteristically carrying out a massive purge with ruthless methods. But when applied to those traitors, this handling was indeed reasonable. Ajuka Beelzebub said coldly, that's good. Once the army is fully in place, strike immediately and clean up the old Satan faction and Rizvam Levon Lucifer, these cancers of the underworld, all at once. A bone-chilling coldness leaked from the depths of his eyes. He had endured for too long for this very moment. As long as the old Satan faction and Rizvam Levon Lucifer were alive, the underworld would never know peace. The slaughter across the lands of the underworld gradually subsided. Many current heads of pure-blooded devil noble houses finally breathed a sigh of relief. They understood in their hearts that since they hadn't openly violated the rules of the New Mao Castle this time, the flames of retribution would naturally not reach them. However, the problem was that they had previously engaged in acts of double-dealing against the New Mao Castle, and what they feared most was the New Mao Castle settling both old and new scores at once. The entire underworld had truly seen it clearly this time. Seers ex Lucifer, this His Majesty, might not act, but when he did, it meant death. The gentle and benevolent methods of the past were merely because the underworld needed it then. But once someone blocked the path of the underworld, he would turn into a thorough destroyer, cold-bloodedly crushing all obstacles into dust. Take this time for example. Those purged, pure-blooded devil nobles, whether they were the current heads or the successors, were all executed by Seers ex Lucifer's own hands. His power of destruction far surpassed that of the previous heirs of the Baal clan, making everyone's scalp tingle and their backs go cold. Some looked at the territories destroyed by the New Mao Castle's Devil Royal Guard and couldn't help but sigh, a myriad of emotions welling up in their hearts. The morning light spilled into the room, sunlight passing through the gaps in the curtains and landing on Sona's face. She felt a trace of warmth, and her eyelashes trembled slightly. Slowly opening her eyes, the familiar profile came into view. White hair spread out softly, and resting her head on his broad chest, she could feel a sense of stability and warmth. The corners of her mouth curled up involuntarily, her eyes filled with a hint of infatuation. Lying in the arms of her beloved, enjoying such tranquility, Sona thought this was truly wonderful. Not sleeping a bit more. Luo Yu had also woken up. Looking down to see the person in his arms frowning slightly, he gently stroked her hair, as if to soothe her. No. If we don't get up, Tsubaki Shinra and the others might just barge in. Sona moved her body, the soreness making her shoot Luo Yu a glare. Luo Yu rubbed his nose in embarrassment. There were some things he was just playing dumb about. If they were to really be brought up, he wouldn't know how to respond. Silence is sometimes the best answer. Explaining anything would just be wrong. Tsubaki Shinra, Kaneko, Akano, Kuroka, Raya Kusaka, these are the ones I know of so far. I just don't know if there are others I'm unaware of. There was a hint of jealousy in Sona's tone. In matters like this, what woman could truly not care? It's just that everyone's tolerance varies. But on second thought, she understood. She, Raya Kusaka, and Kaneko were latecomers. Kuroka, Akano, and Tsubaki Shinra were the ones who had met Luo Yu earliest and were the first to develop feelings for him. It's just that, in the end, she was the one who walked to his side first. As she thought about it, that hint of jealousy slowly faded. I'm getting up first. If you're still sleepy, lie down for a while longer. Sona sat up, the quilt sliding off her smooth, fair skin, revealing a beautiful sight. Seeing her get up, Luo Yu couldn't very well stay in bed. Although he enjoyed sleeping in, he didn't have the habit of going back to sleep once he was truly awake. Besides, there were guests arriving today. Master, President, good morning, you must have slept very comfortably last night. Sona and Luo Yu, fully dressed, had just walked out of the room when they saw Tsubaki Shinra standing in the hallway with a mischievous grin. Standing next to her were Raya Kusaka and Tsubaki Shinra, both staring intensely at Sona, looking her up and down as if confirming something. Sona's face flushed red for a moment, tinged with shyness, making her look exceptionally charming. However, she quickly returned to her usual self, putting on her presidential authority and glaring fiercely at Tsubaki Shinra. Tsubaki, your training is doubled today. Ah, President, you can't do that. Outside the territory of the Citri clan, in a dark and gloomy forest. Devils rarely passed through here, not just because it was too close to the Citri clan territory, but mainly because many dangerous magical beasts lived in this forest. Those magical beasts loved to ambush passing devils, causing many devils to turn pale at the mere mention of this place. But now, the entire forest was as quiet as death. Those fierce magical beasts were all lying on the ground, trembling, not daring to move an inch. It was as if something that terrified them to the bone had descended into this forest. When dealing with these untamed beasts, the aura of a dragon reincarnation really is the most effective. Cao Cao glanced into the depths of the forest, where the magical beasts, suppressed by the dragon reincarnation aura emanating from Valley, didn't even dare to take a full breath. Magical beasts, yokai, vampires, these creatures were born with an instinctive fear of the dragon species. That fear was like a brand etched deep into their souls. Your strength has increased again. You now have the combat power of a full-fledged super devil. Although Valley had not yet deployed the White Dragon Emperor's light wings, Cao Cao could feel that the aura on him had undergone an earth-shattering change compared to before. Valley leaned against the tree trunk and nodded. This time, I benefited from the Red Dragon Emperor. When he used the sacred Juggernaut drive last time, it gave me quite a bit of inspiration. The prototype for that new form of Juggernaut drive already existed, and after spending quite some time on it, it's finally perfected. Among the four great emperors, Valley inherited the bloodline of the original Lucifer, and in terms of potential alone, he was the strongest of the group. Although Cao Cao was always arrogant, he acknowledged this point. Valley's potential was a cut above his, and he was a bit higher than Dulio Gesualdo. Ranked last was Luo Yu. At the end of the day, Luo Yu was human by origin, and his aptitude and potential were limited. If he didn't go through the dragon reincarnation process, even if he barely managed to reach the Mao class, he would eventually be left further and further behind by Valley, Cao Cao, and Dulio Gesualdo due to a lack of stamina. Not to mention the Super Devil King class, it was very likely he would be stuck at the Mao class for the rest of his life. Dragon reincarnation was the path Luo Yu had to take. Cao Cao, if you can liberate the power of that god hidden within the true Longinus and unleash the balance breaker, you might be stronger than me, and perhaps you could even catch up to the Red Dragon Emperor's pace. Valley said, staring at the true Longinus that Cao Cao was carrying on his shoulder. The boosted gear and the White Dragon Emperor's light wings housed the power of the two heavenly dragons, while the true Longinus contained the remaining power of that fallen god, which was only stronger, not weaker, than the two heavenly dragons. Perhaps. Comparing to you is no problem, but I always feel that the Red Dragon Emperor is hiding some other trump card. For once, Cao Cao wasn't boasting. He is the type to always keep an ace up his sleeve, never letting anyone see where his bottom line truly lies. Even if one were to say he was hiding a killing move on the level of the Eternal Kingdom, it wouldn't be strange at all. Valley felt deeply the same way about Cao Cao's words. The more he understood that Red Dragon Emperor, the less he could see through him. It was like looking at flowers through the mist. Speaking of balance breaker, I always feel. Cao Cao paused, frowning as he said, the will of that god remaining in the true Longinus has too much baleful energy. If I don't purify this baleful energy first, even if I can unleash the balance breaker, I will be influenced by that thing, and I might lose myself. Baleful energy. Valley was stunned for a moment. He understood that the boosted gear and the White Dragon Emperor's light wings accumulated the grudges of previous hosts. But how could the consciousness left by that god in the true Longinus have baleful energy? Could it be because it was produced when that god fell? Valley guessed. This was the only possibility he could think of. Cao Cao shook his head, denying this speculation. It shouldn't be. Last time, after the Red Dragon Emperor killed the Hades, god of the underworld, I could clearly feel that the baleful energy of the remnant consciousness in the true Longinus had decreased. This is quite strange. Cao Cao couldn't figure it out, and Valley was also confused. He couldn't figure out what the death of Hades, god of the underworld, had to do with that god. Could they have had a grudge between them? If I told you that Hades, god of the underworld, also had a hand in the fall of that god, would you still find it strange? A voice suddenly entered Cao Cao and Valley's ears. Cao Cao turned his head and looked at Luo Yu, who had appeared out of nowhere. Red Dragon Emperor, are you saying that the death of that god was done by Hades, god of the underworld? His heart was full of questions. If it was really as the Red Dragon Emperor said, then it indeed made sense. Why? Once Hades, god of the underworld, died, the baleful energy of the remnant thoughts of that god in the true Longinus dissipated by more than half. But could this guy Hades, god of the underworld, ambush that god? Besides, who didn't know about that god perishing together with the first generation 4 great demon kings of the underworld? Valley's eyes darkened, and he suddenly recalled a few inexplicable words Azazel had spoken to him. He said that Michael was very black-hearted and had played everyone in the three realms for fools. He struck too ruthlessly, leaving no room for mercy. The Great War was ended by him. Although it was just fragmented words, when he wanted to ask for clarification at the time, Azazel shut his mouth, which was very annoying. Luo Yu didn't waste any words, directly taking Cao Cao and Valley into the memory that Michael had shown him. It was still that scene from the ancient era. As soon as Beast Emperor 666 appeared, Cao Cao and Valley's expressions changed. Several super devils, along with people from the underworld and Grigori, joined forces to seal Beast Emperor 666 into the Eternal Kingdom, a place similar to the New Heaven. Cao Cao and Valley continued to watch. They knew that if it were just that simple, the Red Dragon Emperor wouldn't have shown this memory. Indeed, 3 supreme gods led by Shiva of the Hindu pantheon, plus Hades, god of the underworld, and 2 other super devils from other pantheons. 6 super devils, 6 gods capable of overturning the 3 realms, struck together. They killed the god who was weakened to the extreme in the sky. The memory ended here. What Michael showed Luo Yu when he was in heaven, he showed to Cao Cao and Valley exactly as it was. Neither Cao Cao nor Valley said a word. Especially Cao Cao. He finally figured out where the baleful energy and the remnant thoughts of that god in the true Longinus came from. But as for what to do next, he had no clue. Following the example of Hades, god of the underworld, could he possibly kill all the remaining 5 super devils? Luo Yu knew in his heart that, let alone him alone, even if all the 4 great emperors struck, that guy blocking the way, Shiva, the world's second-ranked monster, was not someone who could be easily dealt with. Valley spoke up. There are 3 supreme gods in the Hindu pantheon, the god of destruction Shiva, the protector Vishnu, and the creator Brahma. Not counting the Hades, god of the underworld you killed, there are also the sun god Aten of the Egyptian pantheon and the god of light Lugh of the Celtic pantheon. Valley counted the identities of the 6 super devil who caused the fall of the supreme god. If these names were thrown out there, the entire world would probably be dumbfounded. Every single one of them is among the top 10 ruthless people in the world. How truly filthy. Valley had always liked to face powerhouses head-on, and he looked down on these types who stabbed people in the back. Furthermore, the target of their attack was the supreme god who had just saved the 3 realms and was still extremely weak. If it weren't for the supreme god sealing Beast Emperor 666, the pantheons these guys belonged to would have all been finished. They really are a bunch of ungrateful ingrates. Red Dragon Emperor, I guess this memory footage was given to you by heaven, right? Valley's tone was certain. Azazel seemed to know a part of it, but not everything. Those 6 super devil who besieged the supreme god 21 years ago could not possibly have exposed this matter themselves, let alone handed such leverage to the Red Dragon Emperor, otherwise, they would be collectively shunned by the gods of the 3 realms. The most likely culprit was heaven. Luo Yu nodded, not hiding anything. That's right, this memory was given by Michael. During the Great War, Michael disguised himself as the Supreme God, relying on the power the Supreme God left in heaven. What does heaven mean by showing you this? Could it be that they want to use the power of the 4 of us to avenge the Supreme God? Cao Cao curled his lip, his face full of disdain. Dulio Gesualdo was a man of heaven. He had to kill the remaining 5 super devil to clear the lingering malice of the Supreme God from the will of the true Longinus. If the 2 of them really wanted to act, the Red Dragon Emperor and the White Dragon Emperor couldn't just stand by and watch. However, if they really did that, heaven's wishful thinking was too calculating. Using them as guns, they should be careful about playing with fire. Cao Cao's eyes flashed with cold light. Luo Yu waved his hand, explaining, Michael let me see those images because he wanted me to use the Eternal Kingdom to leave a way out for the angel race. He explained heaven's revenge plan in detail. Cao Cao and Valley listened, their expressions changing from surprise to shock, and finally, they froze completely. The 2 of them didn't recover for a long time. The angel's plan scared them quite a bit. They actually wanted to use heaven as a sacrifice to pave the way for that deity, while simultaneously declaring war on several mainstream pantheons. This was simply the act of a madman. Even Albion, residing within the White Dragon Emperor's wings, was shocked, reacting exactly the same way Diedrag did when he first learned of this. When do Michael and the others plan to make their move? Cao Cao asked urgently. This was no small matter. It was a great war that could drag every living being in the three realms into it, far more tragic than the Great War by more than tenfold. Once heaven disappeared, the resulting catastrophe would be unimaginable. Knowing the situation in advance was a good thing, it could save many lives. Unfortunately, he was destined to be disappointed. Not to mention Luo Yu not knowing, even Dulio Gesualdo, that disciple of Michael, did not know when his master planned to strike. It's best not to talk about this everywhere. Luo Yu cautioned. Whether to stand by and watch or help Michael and the others, we will decide based on the situation. Cao Cao and Valley knew in their hearts that this matter was too serious. Since they didn't know Michael's action time, they might as well let the secret rot in their stomachs. They didn't intend to reveal it to Indra or Azazel for the time being. I've called you two here mainly to deal with Rizvam Levon Lucifer and the old Satan faction. For just one Rizvam Levon Lucifer, you and Valley are enough, why call me over? If I remember correctly, the underworld is the main force this time, not us. Cao Cao looked puzzled. Rizvam Levon Lucifer's strength was good, but the Red Dragon Emperor and the White Dragon Emperor were now at the Super Devil level. Adding that the underworld would send at least one Super Devil, 3 Super Devil joining forces would make dealing with them like child's play. There was no need for him to come and join in the fun. I have other things to do. Luo Yu said. Leave dealing with Rizvam Levon Lucifer to Searsex Lucifer and Valley. Cao Cao, I want you to lead the hero faction and help me find the energy crystals that the old Satan faction brought out from the Chaos Brigade when they withdrew from the underworld. This was also one of the reasons why Luo Yu was willing to help the underworld eliminate the old Satan faction. When those guys were defeated in the Devil Civil War, they secretly took away a large batch of crystals containing powerful energy. They had intended to use these things as capital for a comeback. The function of these crystals was similar to the Norse pantheon energy crystals he had devoured before. They were strategic resources that could serve as energy cores for large-scale magic circles. He needed to use these crystals to cut off the origin gold pattern in his body and improve his strength. If he guessed correctly, that kid Dulio Gesualdo's current combat power must have already surpassed the 3 of them. Since he didn't want to follow the path arranged by Michael and become the second Michael, he had to go to the battlefield. Michael would definitely bring out the old reserves left behind by the gods of heaven to help him raise his strength. Otherwise, relying solely on one Zenith Tempest, and being only at the Mao class himself, trying to go against several pantheons would simply not be enough. He might even get crushed by a Super Devil level battle. Luo Yu pondered for a moment. He also had to quickly raise his strength. Cao Cao didn't know what Luo Yu was planning, but he still nodded. Those energy crystals were useless to him and the entire hero faction. Since the Red Dragon Emperor wanted them, he would just grab them while dealing with the old Satan faction. This could also prevent the old Satan faction and Rizvam Levon Lucifer from acting like a cornered dog. Lest they destroy everything and waste it for nothing. In the human world, a quiet canyon. There were devil legions patrolling back and forth around the perimeter of the canyon, with large gaps. However, looking at the complexions of these soldiers and the equipment on their bodies, they all exuded a lifeless vibe. They walked slowly, calling it a patrol was more like strolling around to slack off. There was no sign of the discipline of a regular army. It looked more like a bunch of ragtag stragglers just making up the numbers. Passing through this group of devil soldiers, they arrived at the middle of the canyon. There was a 2-story building here, looking like an oval conference room on the outside. At this moment, in the conference room, several people were red-faced and swearing angrily. Searsex Lucifer. These fake devil kings have uprooted all the power we hid in the underworld. Creusuri Asmodeus couldn't hold back his anger and slammed his fist onto the wooden table in front of him. The table shattered into pieces. He was a descendant of the original Devil King Asmodeus, and now he was full of rage. There was more than one person in the room. There was also the descendant of the original Devil King Beelzebub, Shalba Beelzebub, and the descendant of the original Devil King Leviathan, Cateria Leviathan. Their complexions were no better. Having just received news from the underworld, they really didn't expect the New Mao Castle to strike so hard. 6 pure-blooded devil noble families, along with the smaller families under them, not one was spared. It didn't look like the style of the New Mao Castle at all. They didn't care at all how many pure-blooded devil nobles in the underworld died. In their view, those who didn't stand on their side during the Devil Civil War were all traitors. When they eventually dealt with these fakes and reclaimed the true Devil King throne, none of these traitors would be able to escape, they would all be liquidated. But this chaos in the underworld had wiped out the forces they had secretly supported in one fell swoop. Those people were all their trump cards for returning to the underworld and reclaiming the throne in the future. Now that there wasn't even a helper left in the underworld, even if they beat those hypocrites down, it wouldn't be easy to snatch back the throne. It's all that Red Dragon Emperor's fault. If it weren't for him, where would all these troubles come from? Kateria Leviathan gritted her teeth and cursed. The whole mess with the Seatree clan had long spread throughout the underworld and couldn't be hidden from their ears. Didn't Uncle tell you all that it's best not to gossip behind that kid's back? Haven't you learned your lesson from the beating last time? An exaggerated voice suddenly interrupted. Shelba Beelzebub and the other two turned their heads in unison. Rizebum Levon Lucifer, what are you here for? Shelba Beelzebub frowned, staring at Rizebum Levon Lucifer who had suddenly appeared. This guy, like them, was a descendant of an original Devil King, and he was even the biological son of the original Devil King Lucifer. But he had no interest in returning to the underworld, appearing and disappearing all day. No one knew what he really wanted to do. Coupled with his super devil strength, the few of them had always kept him at a distance, feeling fearful in their hearts. Yo, Shelba Beelzebub, forgotten what Uncle taught you? Do you want Uncle to help you recall? Rizebum Levon Lucifer had a smile on his lips, but there was no warmth in his eyes. Shelba Beelzebub felt a sudden chill in his heart and reluctantly lowered his head to admit his mistake. Sorry, Lord Rizebum Levon Lucifer, it was my loose mouth. He knew too well that this guy was a madman, his mood changing faster than flipping a book. Sometimes you could scold him to his face, and Rizebum Levon Lucifer wouldn't give a fool. But if he happened to be in a bad mood, like now, just calling him by his name might get you beaten to death. This guy could even attack his own son and grandson. He was cold-blooded to the bone, let alone outsiders like them. Not bad, not bad. Uncle likes obedient children. Although that Red Dragon Emperor brat is indeed annoying and ruined all my plans, his strength is truly a bit scary, even I can't beat him anymore. Rizebum Levon Lucifer sighed exaggeratedly. Lord Rizebum Levon Lucifer, do you have any instructions for coming here? Kateria Leviathan asked cautiously. Rizebum Levon Lucifer leaned back in his chair and laughed slowly. Sigh. Since Dragon Eater Samael has been completely finished off by that brat from the Red Dragon family, there's no point in me staying here anymore. His tone was light, as if he were just chatting casually. For the sake of the bloodline of you old things, I'll give you a reminder before I leave. Don't let those ruthless people in the underworld wipe you all out in one go. Shelba Beelzebub and the others were stunned, their eyes full of disbelief. Immediately after, a surge of ecstasy rushed up from the bottom of their hearts. This old guy is leaving. Leaving the Chaos Brigade. The 4 great emperors usually didn't stay in the group. If they left, wouldn't all the say fall into their own hands? Wouldn't they be able to take this opportunity to get more power from Infinite Dragon God Ophis? Once they had enough power, even without the support of pure-blooded devil noble families, they could snatch the entire underworld by force with just their fists. Rizebum Levon Lucifer saw through Shelba Beelzebub and the others' thoughts clearly. He curled his lips slightly, revealing a disdainful arc. These few ignorant wretches, still wanting to snatch the underworld from Searsx Lucifer and the others. They were simply clowns jumping on stage, ridiculously funny. As for Ophis, Rizebum Levon Lucifer glanced at the depths of the canyon with his peripheral vision. He joined the Chaos Brigade, like the vast majority of people, for the power of Ophis. However, the purpose was different. He wanted to devour all of Ophis's power. Dragon Eater Samael was the biggest trump card in his hand. It is a pity that this card has already been ruined by that brat, the Red Dragon Emperor. Samael is the only guy in the three realms capable of hurting Ophis. Now that his trump card is gone, Rizvam Levon Lucifer naturally has no interest in playing house here with this bunch of arrogant brats who do not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Besides, the movements from the underworld side really surprised him a bit. A trace of unease faintly welled up in his heart. Especially Fenrir, who actually appeared at the banquet of the Seatree clan. And even got mixed up with that brat, the Red Dragon Emperor. Come to think of it, Loki, who has been missing for so long, must have been finished off by that brat, the Red Dragon Emperor. Fenrir must have been lured away by him as well. The problem is, did the Red Dragon Emperor kill Loki outside, or did he make his move near the Chaos Brigade? If it was outside, that would be nothing. But if it was here, Rizvam Levon Lucifer's gaze darkened. Regardless of which is the truth, it is enough to make him ponder. Rizvam Levon Lucifer had a thought cross his mind. Coming back this time was likely a real mistake. The people from the Chaos Brigade cannot stay here any longer. He had just thought of this. Boom! A loud explosion erupted, shaking the entire heaven and earth. Before Shalba Beelzebub and his group could react to what was happening, a massive pitch-black power of destruction descended from the sky, slamming directly onto the canyon, blasting that oval-shaped building along with the entire canyon into dust. Dust danced across the sky, the green vegetation was completely leveled, and only a gray, hazy ruin remained in place. The trees near the canyon were snapped in half by the shockwave, and birds and beasts fled in terror. Animal instinct told them that something big was about to happen over there. Not long after, bang! A muffled sound came from within the ruins. It seemed like something was exerting force from inside, pushing away all the rubble pressing down on top. As the dust and smoke dissipated, Rizvam Levon Lucifer and Shalba Beelzebub and a few others revealed their figures from the ruins. He looked up at the sky at Sears X Lucifer, who had already entered destruction mode, as well as Seraphal and Falbium Asmodeus behind him. The three great devil kings of the underworld had all arrived. There was no expression of surprise on Rizvam Levon Lucifer's face. That feeling of unease in his heart earlier was indeed not for nothing. How is this possible? Sears X Lucifer. How could you fake devil kings be here? This is, the demonic forbidden army of the New Mao Castle. Kateria Leviathan was covered in dirt, her voice sharp and grating, staring wide-eyed at the dense, black masses of the demonic forbidden army in front of her. That group of soldiers had an astonishing aura, filled with murderous intent, each one with a stern face, their eyes carrying a determination that feared no death. This was the ace unit of the New Mao Castle, the demonic forbidden army. Their combat power was a cut above the Royal Guard. The ranks were basically filled with mid-class devils and high-class devils, one could barely see any low-class devils. What Shalba Beelzebub and the others couldn't figure out most was, if the New Mao Castle were to mobilize such a large formation as the demonic forbidden army, how could it possibly have escaped the notice of their informants? And how did the underworld find the lair of the Chaos Brigade? HMPH, still haven't figured it out. Rizvam Levon Lucifer looked at Shalba Beelzebub and the others mockingly. That brat, the Red Dragon Emperor, sold us all out, sold us to the underworld. With just this little bit of brains, they still dream all day about returning to the underworld to seize the position of Devil King. Rizvam Levon Lucifer's gaze crossed over Sears X Lucifer and locked onto Falbium Asmodeus in the rear. The matter of the demonic forbidden army, it was your doing, right, Falbium Asmodeus. He hadn't spent any less time dealing with Falbium Asmodeus than he had with Sears X Lucifer. Sears X Lucifer had by this time completely entered his destruction form, the pressure around his body as heavy as a mountain. Rizvam Levon Lucifer, and Shalba Beelzebub, you should all stop now. For the sake of the contributions the first generation 4 great demon kings made for the underworld, I can spare your lives. His tone carried a weight that allowed no rebuttal. Sears X Lucifer, you imposters are not worthy of mentioning the first generation 4 great demon kings. Creusuri Asmodeus raised his hand to point at Sears X Lucifer, his voice filled with anger. And that Red Dragon Emperor, he won't escape. Lady Ophis is right here. The pressure of the infinite dragon god Ophis was indeed still permeating the surroundings. Even if more enemies came, they wouldn't panic. In the three realms, no one could contend with the infinite dragon god. Shalba Beelzebub and Cateria Leviathan had the same thought in their hearts. They even wished that Ophis would take action right now and wipe out all these impostors who were obstructing them. Rizvam Levon Lucifer looked at their faces, his eyes filled with mockery. If it weren't for the fact that you truly have the blood of the first generation four great demon kings flowing in you, I would suspect that you had been swapped by someone. Lord Rizvam Levon Lucifer, what do you mean by that? Shalba Beelzebub gritted his teeth, unable to suppress his rising anger. Anyone who could still smile after being scolded must be a fool. You know full well that the brat, the Red Dragon Emperor, has already sold us out. Do you really think he wouldn't be on guard against the infinite dragon god? Rizvam Levon Lucifer's words were like a bucket of cold water poured down. Shalba Beelzebub and the others suddenly realized. Earlier, when Sears X Lucifer made his move, he blew the entire canyon flat. With such a huge commotion, it was impossible for Ophis to still be asleep. But now the canyon had become a ruin, yet the shadow of that person was nowhere to be seen. No. Impossible. Shalba Beelzebub's voice began to tremble. That fool, the Red Dragon Emperor, how dare he do this? Without the protection of the infinite dragon god, what could they and the legions under them use to fight Sears X Lucifer? Even if they still had the snakes given by Ophis inside their bodies, there was simply no chance of victory. Before the words had even finished, the bodies of Shalba Beelzebub and the others suddenly stiffened. They sensed that the snakes inside their bodies were rapidly disappearing. The only one capable of doing this silently was the owner of the snakes. The infinite dragon god Ophis had taken back all the snakes on them. The canyon was terrifyingly quiet, as if even the wind had been frozen. The expressions of Shalba Beelzebub and the other two were uglier than a dead person's. Ophis's snakes, that was their only trump card to turn the tables. With that snake, they could at least jump from the peak of Mao class to the super devil level in one go, at least able to clash a few times with Falbium Asmodeus and Seraphol. But now, the snakes were gone. Let alone winning, whether they could survive and escape was a big problem. Behind Shalba Beelzebub and the others, those devil legions that had been scattered by the aftermath of Sears X Lucifer's attack were gathering in a scattered manner. But each one of them looked like eggplants hit by frost. Seeing Sears X Lucifer and the other two, and then seeing the row of murderous demonic forbidden army behind them, many devils had legs that were trembling. Compared to that group of forbidden army soldiers with soaring fighting spirit, it was simply like heaven and earth. It couldn't be blamed on them. This group of devil legions were originally remnants who had escaped from the last civil war, hiding here and there for so many years, their bones had long since softened. Charge. Kill these impostors. Shalba Beelzebub gritted his teeth and directly issued a death order. The three of them knew clearly that if they dragged this out any longer, the morale of the devils following them would completely collapse, and it was even possible that some would defect on the spot. It would be better to give it a try. Perhaps they could find a way to survive. If it were really as Sears X Lucifer said, to surrender and be locked up in the underworld prison, never to see the light of day again, that would be worse than dying quickly. Even if the devil legions of the old Satan faction were unwilling in every way, since their masters had spoken, they could only bite the bullet and charge. The two groups of troops collided fiercely. Shouts of killing and roars shook heaven and earth, and the smell of blood permeated the air. In just one encounter, countless devil corpses fell like dumplings, splattering onto the ground. Of those who died, 8 out of 10 were from the old Satan faction, the demonic forbidden army only lost 2. The gap was instantly widened. At this moment, Rizvam Levon Lucifer entangled Sears X Lucifer. Cateria Leviathan, Creusuri Asmodeus, and Shalba Beelzebub surrounded Seraphol. Power of destruction, ice elements, and various magics bombarded back and forth, fighting until heaven and earth crumbled. Falbium Asmodeus was the last remaining super devil class combatant on the field. He didn't go to help Seraphol fight those three, but instead stood to the side, his gaze cold enough to chill one to the bone. Rizvam Levon Lucifer knew very clearly that an existence like Seraphol at the limit of the super devil level, coupled with the three peak Mao class powerhouses of Shalba Beelzebub, Creusuri Asmodeus, and Cateria Leviathan, were simply not worth him taking seriously. What was most important for him right now was to bring his strengths into play, using his extraordinary strategy to command the demonic Forbidden Army, keeping casualties to a minimum while being able to wipe out the remnants of the old Satan faction in one go. Sears x Lucifer, compared to the time of the Devil Civil War, you have indeed made some progress. Rizvam Levon Lucifer squeezed his hand, and the power of destruction attack rushing toward him shattered in his palm. The move looked very casual, and he seemed even more at ease in dealing with Sears x Lucifer. But the way his brows were tightly furrowed exposed it, things were not as easy as they appeared on the surface. Bang! A powerful strike that had been charging for a long time erupted. The space in front was shaken until it shattered piece by piece, revealing the pitch-black void. Even though Sears x Lucifer had already transformed into his destruction form, he couldn't hold up under this strike, his body directly retreating a dozen steps in the air before he could stabilize. The dominance of this move was evident. Once Rizvam Levon Lucifer saw that he had succeeded, he was immediately overjoyed. Taking advantage of the small distance opened up between him and Sears x Lucifer, he turned and fled toward the distance without hesitation. From beginning to end, he never thought about fighting Sears x Lucifer to the death. Even if he luckily finished off Sears x Lucifer, so what? He was not one of those idiots like Shalba Beelzebub, staring fixedly at the position of Underworld Devil King and refusing to let go. He must run now. Otherwise, if Ajuka Beelzebub were to come, and two super devils surrounded and attacked him, he would truly be in dire straits. Unfortunately, he hadn't run very far. A white shadow descended from the sky, directly blocking his path. Valley. Rizvam Levon Lucifer's complexion instantly darkened to the extreme. Blocking in front of him was none other than Valley, who had been waiting nearby for a long time. At this moment, he had unleashed the Silver Sacred Juggernaut Drive, which compared to the Juggernaut Drive in its normal state before, was simply like heaven and earth. In terms of strength alone, it had already completely rushed to the level of a super devil. His ability to nullify sacred gears had an upper limit. Back then, when the Red Dragon Emperor unleashed the Sacred Juggernaut Drive in the underworld, he had faintly felt it, his ability was completely useless against that form. And now, that feeling had come again. Right here on his own grandson, Valley. This was truly troublesome now. He could still maneuver against one super devil, but with two super devils flanking him, this was simply forcing him into a dead end. Rizvam Levon Lucifer. Valley didn't care what Rizvam Levon Lucifer was thinking right now. Dragon power and magic power erupted simultaneously, the surrounding space was shaken violently, and following that, an attack resembling an aurora bombarded toward Rizvam Levon Lucifer. At the same time, Sears x Lucifer also caught up. The power of destruction on his hand transformed into a beam of light, smashing straight toward Rizvam Levon Lucifer. Fool it. Rizvam Levon Lucifer's complexion changed abruptly. Boom. Rizvam Levon Lucifer was covered in injuries, and his right arm had been completely crippled. He sacrificed an arm just to barely block the combined attack from Sears x Lucifer and Valley, but he also knew that he likely had no way out this time. The two of them gave him no time to catch his breath, pouncing on him again with full killing intent. On the other side, Seraphal was basically suppressing Shalba Beelzebub and the other two, beating them so badly they didn't even have a chance to fight back. Creusari Asmodeus and Cateria Leviathan were already injured beyond recognition, especially Cateria Leviathan, whose two arms had long since been twisted out of shape, with the bones dislocated. She gritted her teeth, her arms suddenly twisting and lengthening as they coiled toward Seraphal, and then her entire body began to swell. She intended to self-destruct. Seraphal, let's go to hell together. Cateria Leviathan, sorry, but I promised Sona that I would definitely return alive. Seraphal raised the magic wand in her hand and uttered only two words. Ice bind. In an instant, Cateria Leviathan, who was still swelling, didn't even have time to retract her expression of unwillingness before she was frozen inside a giant ice sphere. All her vitality and rampant energy were locked away, and she could no longer move. Immediately after, a cracking sound rang out. The ice sphere began to crack from the center, the fissures spreading rapidly, and finally, it shattered into shards of ice that scattered into the air. The descendant of the first generation four great demon kings Leviathan, Cateria Leviathan, was completely finished. The battle grew more intense. The entire battlefield was divided into 3 sections. The demonic Forbidden Army led by Falbium Asmodeus had been crushing the old Satan faction's legions. The enemy's forces, which started at tens of thousands of devils, had been beaten down to only a few thousand, struggling desperately to hold on. Whenever anyone tried to run, Falbium Asmodeus didn't let a single one go, killing them all with his own hands. The goal of this battle was to uproot the old Satan faction entirely, leaving no survivors. As for the losses on the side of the demonic Forbidden Army, they were practically negligible. Only a few thousand devils had died, in exchange for tens of thousands of casualties on the other side. No matter how you looked at it, it was a major victory. Falbium Asmodeus's proper command was one aspect, but on the other hand, it also showed that the demonic Forbidden Army's combat strength was truly strong enough, one could take on 10. The second section was Seraphal suppressing and beating up Shalba Beelzebub and Creusury Asmodeus. With Cateria Leviathan dead, those two found it even harder to parry Seraphal's offensive. If not for the few trump cards left behind by the first generation 4 great demon kings in their hands, they would have long since been frozen and shattered into dust. But even so, they wouldn't last long. It was only a matter of time before they were finished off by Seraphal. Luo Yu stood in midair, his back straight, with nothing beneath his feet, yet he remained as if nailed to that spot. He had been waiting for someone. The roaring sounds coming from the distant battlefield made the air tremble. He glanced over there from time to time, able to see Cao Cao leading his hero faction troops, moving out the energy crystals hidden by the old Satan faction. That stuff was piled up like a small mountain, and the quantity was enough for him to break through to the Super Devil class. Still not coming. Could I have guessed wrong? This encirclement campaign against the old Satan faction and Rizvam Levon Lucifer had been overwhelmingly smooth from the start. They had absolutely no room for a comeback, and at this rate, total annihilation was only a matter of time. But the person Luo Yu was waiting for still hadn't appeared. He couldn't help but ponder in his heart, had his guess really gone wrong? Even if Rizvam Levon Lucifer died here, would it not implicate anyone else? Would absolutely no one step in to save him? Just at this moment, Luo Yu's pupils contracted suddenly. He stared fixedly at a spot not far in front of him, his voice lowered but carrying clear gravity. I guessed many people, gods and Buddhas, dragons, angels, devils, fallen angels. I never expected that the one who would come to save Rizvam Levon Lucifer in the end would be you. He paused. Just now, I was still wondering if my judgment was wrong. God of destruction, Shiva. As the words fell, the air in front of him twisted like crumpled paper. A barefoot youth walked out from within, wrapped in magnificent animal skins. With every step he took, the space beneath his feet shattered inch by inch. He didn't even need to make a move, just standing there exuded an aura of destruction. This youth was one of the supreme gods in Hindu mythology, the god of destruction, Shiva. Looking across the entire 3 realms, the only one who could be ranked ahead of him was the infinite dragon god Ophis. If it were Zeus and that group of guys making a move, I could understand it. Luo Yu stared at him, his eyes filled with vigilance, but you. I just don't get it. A mere Rizvam Levon Lucifer should be nothing in your eyes. What exactly are you planning to use him for? If one were to say who else in the 3 realms could make Luo Yu wary, in terms of pure strength, other than Ophis, the god of destruction Shiva from the Hindu pantheon before him was definitely one. Boom. The clear sky suddenly erupted with thunder. The sound waves pushed outward like the tide, wave after wave. Countless leaves fell rustlingly, and even the hard mountains couldn't withstand it, their surfaces cracking with fine lines. Looking up, the scene before one's eyes made one's scalp tingle. The entire firmament seemed to have been forcibly torn open, revealing a vast stretch of pitch-black nothingness. Shiva stood in the center of that darkness, his gaze as calm as if he were looking at an insect. He stared at Luo Yu, his tone devoid of fluctuation. Red Dragon Emperor, right? You cannot stop me. The words were few, but each one sounded like the statement of an unchangeable fact. Luo Yu curled his lips, perhaps. You are indeed strong, but one only knows the result after fighting. It's not for you alone to decide. As he spoke, the boosted gear had already appeared on his arm. With a flash of golden light, he directly entered the sacred juggernaut drive form. A terrifying dragon species over 100 feet in size appeared out of thin air. Its body covered the sky and blocked the sun, the shadow it cast swallowing the entire earth. Everything beneath its feet was like an ant in front of this behemoth. That suffocating aura of a super devil swept wildly in all directions. On the other side, Sears X Lucifer and Valley were fighting intensely with Rizvam Levon Lucifer. Both of them sensed the aura of the Red Dragon Emperor almost simultaneously. They immediately understood in their hearts, the reinforcements Rizvam Levon Lucifer had requested had arrived. This was also a signal, telling them they must finish the battle quickly and hurry up and cut down this guy. Rizvam Levon Lucifer's pressure increased sharply. The wounds on his body were becoming more numerous and more severe. He also sensed the aura of the Red Dragon Emperor, as if he were about to start fighting someone. Rizvam Levon Lucifer, conversely, breathed a sigh of relief. As long as the Red Dragon Emperor didn't come to gang up on him, that would be fine. With Sears X Lucifer and Valley working together, although he had been suppressed and beaten, he still had a sliver of a chance to escape. If the Red Dragon Emperor joined in as well, he would definitely be dead. Not to mention anything else, just the Eternal Kingdom technique that the Red Dragon Emperor used to finish off Hades, god of the underworld, was something he couldn't withstand at all. As for who was fighting the Red Dragon Emperor, he had no leisure to care. As long as that Red Dragon Emperor didn't come looking for him, that was fine. The light of the sun was completely swallowed by the boundless dark void, and the earth suddenly sank into pitch black darkness where one couldn't see their own fingers. Roar. Deep in the darkness, a holy light dragon over 100 feet in size soared into the air, its body emitting a holy radiance, looking exactly like the last bit of light in this world. The terrifying dragon breath covered the sky and earth, rushing fiercely toward the tiny figure below. Facing the dragon breath exhaled by Luo Yu, Shiva merely raised his hand and threw a punch. That dragon breath was like something disintegrating from the inside, shattering layer by layer, and finally dissipating completely. The god of destruction is indeed worthy of the name, able to directly destroy even others' attacks. This destructive power is even more ruthless than the Baal clan's power of destruction. Luo Yu couldn't help but exclaim. This guy Shiva's destructive ability was troublesome to the extreme. I said, Red Dragon Emperor, step down. You are not my opponent. Shiva grabbed casually, tearing the holy blade Luo Yu had condensed using holy control to pieces. Those holy powers were destroyed little by little in his palm. Rizvam Levon Lucifer cannot die, at least not yet. Luo Yu didn't reply. He simultaneously activated two powers, the Crimson Emperor flame that could burn gods, and the black water that could devour all matter. The flames transformed into a giant red dragon, and the black water became a black flood dragon. The red dragon scorched the heavens and earth, and the black flood dragon devoured all things. Dedrag's flames, and Apophis's black water. Looking at the incoming attacks, Shiva's expression finally became rarely serious. He condensed a dense power of destruction in his palm. With a stamp of his foot, the entire void seemed to be trembling. Bang! Shiva rushed to the front of the red dragon first, slapping the dragon's head with one palm. The immense force sent the red dragon flying back over 1,000 meters. That palm was also filled with the power of destruction, and the red dragon began to collapse and decompose from the inside. Shiva was just preparing to deal with the black flood dragon formed by the black water in the same way he had dealt with the red dragon just now. Suddenly, his body gave a violent jolt. A sinister, poisonous power seemed to have burrowed into his body, constantly decaying his flesh, bones, and even his soul. Seizing this split-second opening, Luo Yu controlled the black flood dragon to pounce fiercely, wrapping Shiva entirely within the black water. The properties of the black water began to frantically devour everything about this god of destruction. Open. Only a breath or two later, Shiva let out an angry roar. An incomparably terrifying power of destruction erupted from within his body, blasting the black flood dragon formed by the black water into fragments. Luo Yu smiled. Shiva, who had rushed out of the black water, was already injured. A large chunk of flesh had been forcibly gnawed off his chest by the black water, and even the white bones inside were vaguely visible. His face was pale, and he also exuded an aura of decay. That sense of decay was slowly eroding his body. Good, good, good. Shiva stared coldly at Luo Yu, his voice carrying cold killing intent. Red Dragon Emperor, everyone in the three realms has underestimated you. Shiva, I said just now, some things are useless to talk about with just your mouth. You have to take action to know the result. Luo Yu spoke unhurriedly. Fine, I have remembered this sentence. As the words fell, Shiva was completely swallowed by the power of destruction. He was using this power to constantly flush his own body, wanting to grind away the decay curse that Luo Yu had struck into him earlier bit by bit. Ever since that boosted gear had fused with the decay curse brought by Samael, the Dragon Eater, this was the first time Luo Yu had taken it out to use. He had long since thought it through before. This kind of sinister ability should be avoided if possible. But facing an opponent of Shiva's level, holding back was just asking for death. Although the decay curse had caught Shiva off guard and entered his body, it only caused him to suffer a small loss. Luo Yu could feel that Shiva's aura hadn't weakened much at all, but instead had become stronger. He was probably pissed off by him. Just at this moment, rumble. A loud noise came from the battlefield where Seer's ex Lucifer was in the distance. Luo Yu and Shiva simultaneously sensed that Rizvam Levon Lucifer's aura was fading crazily. Rizvam Levon Lucifer was dead. Shiva's face darkened, and he took a deep look at Luo Yu. That's the end of part 6. Part 7 is coming soon.
Thanks for watching my video. Please like and share it.